Okay, today I want to tell you how I'm going to do this meeting. Roll call first. It's not on my cheat sheet.
Councilman DeCiccio. Councilwoman Guevara.
Here.
Councilwoman Mendoza.
Here.
Councilman Nowakowski.
Here.
Councilwoman Pastor. Councilwoman Stark.
Here.
Vice Mayor Waring. Here. Mayor Williams.
Here. I'm sure you noticed there was a difference when you filled out the cards when you came in. And what I plan to do is everyone can speak, can have 2 minutes, and I'm just going to rotate from one stack to the other, back and forth. I am hoping we can get this down in 2 hours so I don't lose a quorum, but it gives everybody an opportunity to speak. I do have 2 microphones over here set up, so if you can, if I say you're going to be on deck, if you come on down to the second microphone and be ready to speak, it will help the process. Anybody who has submitted a card that says they do not wish to speak, the clerk will make sure that it's entered into the record so that it's there for future purposes. But first, let's have a presentation from city staff. Oh, see, that's not my cheat sheet either. Could you introduce yourself, please?
My name is Mario Barajas. I'm going to be tonight's interpreter, and I'm going to make a brief announcement in Spanish, asking if there's anybody that's going to need an interpreter. Mi nombre es Mario Barajas. Buenas tardes a todos. Habrá servicio de interpretación al español, así que si desean y si necesitan la ayuda de un intérprete, podrán pasar hacia allá atrás. Ahí se encuentra el señor Sergio. ¿Puede alzar la mano, Sergio? Y él les podrá facilitar el equipo para la interpretación. Muchas gracias. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Mario, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, Mayor, thank you very much. Mayor, members of the council, just want to introduce who's up at the table with me. To my left is Eric Bailey with the Bailey Strategic Innovation Group. To my right is Scott Smith, CEO of Valley Metro. And to his right is Jesus Sapien, the City of Phoenix Light Rail Administrator. So 3 months ago, on June 20th, the council approved a motion directing staff to work with Valley Metro and conduct a full analysis of a 4-lane configuration within the already federally approved environmental footprint for the South Central Light Rail extension. The direction was also that the 4-lane analysis be presented to the community for their input through an extensive outreach process with meetings facilitated by an independent facilitator. Immediately, the engineering and design teams got to work on the 4-lane analysis to fully examine the impacts of a 4-lane configuration as compared to the 2-lane configuration. An extensive outreach process was taken to inform residents, businesses, and all the community about the public meetings taking place specifically to discuss the South Central Rail project and the lane configuration issue. In English and Spanish, within the South Phoenix and Central City South areas between downtown and Baseline Road, 7th Avenue and 7th Street, extensive outreach was performed. Door-to-door canvassing, mailers, signs, information stations, door hangers, community meetings, print, radio, and social media advertising, press coverage, and other outreach methods were employed to reach the community. Eric Bailey of the Bailey Strategic Innovation Group was brought in to be the independent facilitator and conduct the 6 meetings, which were very well attended. At those meetings, the findings of the lane analysis and information about the project were presented in videos, poster boards, and handouts, and as part of the overall presentation. Most of the meeting time was devoted to listening to the concerns, questions, comments of the community in attendance. And Eric Bailey facilitated all of those meetings, and we'll be discussing his findings in just a second here. So with the analysis and the community process complete, the requested action is now before the City Council for a decision on how to proceed with the project and the lane configuration. So Eric Bailey will now discuss his work with the community and his findings.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. My name is Eric Bailey, President of Bailey Strategic Innovation Group. I was hired to be the independent third party to have this conversation. I am not employed by the city, I'm not employed by Valley Metro, and I'm not also a citizen of South Central Phoenix. So a lot of folks ask me, what's your opinion? What do you think they should do? And that's not my place. My place is to facilitate conversation. In my practice, I do a lot of work in planning and strategic planning, but ultimately underneath all of it is helping humans communicate with one another, especially when they don't agree. So I designed the meetings to be community conversations. They were intentionally not the typical community conversation where there's a microphone up front and we wait in line to have that microphone. I did not have the microphone there. Some folks were upset about that, but I did it intentionally. I did it intentionally because I wanted to get as many voices heard as possible. And I happen to be an introvert, and so I know that sometimes as an introvert, it's hard to get up in front and speak. So yes, I'm here on the microphone right now. But there are some people who feel that their questions maybe aren't important enough to share, or when someone has a very loud voice, they compare their question to that person's question. They say, maybe I don't need to ask that question. So we actually broke the conversation up so that more people could have more conversations. And the results of that were phenomenal. We had over 450 questions asked and answered, questions and comments. And when you look at the number of people that attended, unique citizens that attended, not counting repeats or staff, there was 402 people that attended. So that indicates that we had questions, responses, follow-up questions, dialogue. And that's something I think through my conversations with folks in the area has been missing for decades. I think that dialogue in that community has been needed for a long time, and I heard some people say, this is too little too late. I don't know if that's the case. It's never too late to have dialogue, but I think that we did a very good job of getting the voices heard. As part of my presentation and starting off each meeting, I introduced my principles of human understanding, which are the brain science and psychology behind communication. And some folks thought that was a waste of time. I hear that quite often when I do that, when I work with groups, executive teams, and city councils and whatnot. But those principles actually help us have more rich, understanding conversations. So we can talk with someone that has a different opinion than us, and we're civil, and we have these wonderful conversations. We get things understood that we didn't know before. So that's the background. That's what we did, and we had a number of meetings, 6 meetings, and we got wonderful dialogue with the community. The findings, and I wrote in the report, my scope was 2 lanes versus 4 lanes. So what does the community feel? And I was instructed to get the pulse of the community. And if that was the question, 2 versus 4, it seemed like the answer was 2. Yes, some people still say I want 4, but when you looked at overall traffic flow, similar to what it is now, it seemed like the answer was 2 lanes. However, it seemed like there might be other questions to be asked as well. So in addition to 2 lanes, 4 lanes, what about displacement? Had a number of questions about displacement and gentrification. What about funding? Is this a good use of our funds? What about our sidewalks? We have sidewalks that are still dirt, and kids are going to school and their school hallways are muddy, and things like that. So there were a lot of questions outside of the scope that folks wanted to talk about. And I think that it's important that we have this kind of dialogue so that we can get those kinds of questions answered. If you did read through the report, we listed every single question and comment that we got. And you'll see a number of them aren't about 2 lanes, 4 lanes. A number of them are about what does it look like? What kind of trees are you going to put in? One woman that I spoke with who attended 3 or 4 meetings said, what about the bridge? Can the bridge handle the weight of the train? And those kinds of questions came out because the community is thirsty for knowledge. And I think there's a good opportunity to continue to have conversations with the community so we can get those kinds of questions answered.
Does the council have any questions of Barry? No, I think this is this the end?
I do have a question for staff, but I don't know if you're going to proceed with the presentation or I should wait.
This is the end of the presentation,
That
correct?
really is all the presentation.
Okay,
for the-
now,
Okay, hi, this question is for Mr. Smith. I was just curious to know when was the last time you spoke with the federal government about the 4-lane option?
Mayor, council member, as a matter of fact, I had a meeting with the hierarchy, the leaders of the Federal Transit Administration just Sunday at the annual meeting of the American Public Transportation Association.
Okay, may I ask what they said?
Absolutely. They've been following this process carefully, looking for, as they described it, a clarifying decision as to which path this council was going to ask us to take. They reiterated that, and we're anticipating this action. They gave us some specifics as to what would happen based on the decision here. But what we're really looking at is in our view and in their view, is not a 2-lane versus 4-lane, but the existing design versus an alternative design, whatever that is. In this case, it's a 4-lane design. And they made it clear, even though, Councilmember, you weren't here on June 20th, we asked about how the Federal Transit Administration would process our paperwork. And we talked about the November deadline to enter into engineering, which is critical for this project to move forward. If we stay with the current design and move forward, we will submit that paperwork, and we'll have very little work to do to continue on with the process. If there is an alternative presented, a design for which we don't have now, whether it be 4-lane or any other alternative, they made it clear that they would require us to do 2 things. Number 1, reopen the environmental process. Even though we stayed in the environmental envelope, what happened is we learned during this analysis that there was enough disruption or changes to the traffic flow on the street that it would require an reopening of the environmental process. This adds approximately a year to 18 months to the process because we would have to reopen the whole thing. The second thing is we would have to perform what's called a risk analysis on the process. Now, what that would do is that obviously takes us past the November deadline. As we go past the deadline, if we do not submit an application, the project would revert into what they would suspend our project. And it would be removed from the FTA list of projects. We would be put out there and not to exist on theirs. Once we got this work done, a year, 18 months down the road, we would then request to re-enter the federal process at the engineering stage. And you would just, whatever the situation was, and I think we've done the timeline, that would not happen until probably the first quarter of 2020. At that time, we would possibly be in, but we would lose our place in line for all the projects.
Thank you.
So there's been a lot of talk about if we extend it or make any changes to the design, that the project can just be X'd out, or it might be a possibility of not having a light rail in South Phoenix. Is there anything in writing for the federal government or anything that we have? Because there's a lot of would, but nothing solid. So I think one of the questions that I've been receiving in these hearings is that why even have this process if you can extend it to 4 lanes? And if you're going to extend it to 4 lanes, then is the federal government going to X our project and put it to the back of the line or not? And some other state would actually benefit from it.
Councilmember, the federal government never gives a definitive answer until you make a specific request or file the paperwork. And so what they can only do is tell you, here's the situation. For example, if we do not file it, they told us very specifically, here's what we would require. Reopening of the NEPA, of the environmental work, and we would remove your project from the list. If you're off the list and you lose your place, once again, this is an oversubscribed program. There are far more projects looking for this money than there is money available. I guess we can all wager as to what it does to our risk. I would say from our standpoint, Valley Metro, if we are removed from the federal list, this project is on life support, is very seriously. And I would not bet on that. But then you're talking 1 in a million chances to get back in. So yes, it would be extremely detrimental if we were to miss those deadlines and be put into that suspended mode. The other thing is that we are, as I go from here in Washington, we're looking at a two-sided discussion on this project. We, of course, have the issue we're dealing with here, But in Washington, funding of transit projects in general, and certainly rail projects, is a very hotly debated item. The administration does not look kindly this current on financing rail projects. Congress has a differing view, and so they have funded. So you have this sort of tug-of-war in the middle. While we can't say exactly what's going to happen in the spring of 2020, there's no doubt that if we remain in the system and keep moving along, following the legally prescribed process, whatever money is there that Congress has appropriated, we are very much in the game for that. There's no guarantees that we'll get that. We still have hurdles to go over. We are still in the game. If we're outside the system, we're not a player. We're not even at the table. We have no chance of getting that money.
Mayor, may I follow-up question? Mm-hmm. So your personal opinion is if this body chooses 4 lanes, that we would be outside of that system, even though we don't have the capacity of engineering and putting the plans in by our deadline of this year, if this body decides 4 lanes?
Well, my professional opinion, regardless of what my personal is, my professional opinion, based on what the Federal Transit Administration hierarchy has told me, is that yes, if we choose a 4-lane, we will be put outside the system because we will have no way to even come close to meeting the deadlines that they have prescribed.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councilwoman, did you have a question?
I have several questions. One question is to Eric. In your statement right now, you had said that it was regarding your purpose was to determine 2 lanes or 4 lanes, not really for you to determine, but really to listen to the community regarding the 2 lanes and 4 lanes. And in that statement and comment, what I heard was you were talking about traffic flow. And I'm not sure if the conversation really was about traffic flow or the conversation was really about 2 lanes, 4 lanes, or no lanes. So I just want to understand what you were trying to articulate.
Thank you very much, Councilwoman. The reason I said traffic flow is some of the comments around 2 lanes were if there are no left-hand turn lanes, what does it look like during rush hour traffic? When we get to the bridge and the bridge is designed for 1 lane each direction, what does that do for traffic flow? Business owners asked, well, how easy will it be for folks to do a U-turn to get to my business? And that's what I mean by traffic flow.
Yeah, I needed clarity because when I hear traffic flow, I'm thinking traffic flow of the flow of the traffic during peak or during all hours, or if there is not a bus pull out, what does that look like? I'm thinking about that type of flow. I now see it as you stated, in a different view of a business owner. How could they get to my business if I'm on the other side? If they're at that light, will there be a left turn lane so that then they can make a U-turn and go, and how would that flow look like? So thank you for the clarity. My second question is to Scott Smith. Right now when I was listening, I heard, there's 2 things that I heard. And I just need clarity on my interpretation. I heard, yes, there's a possibility we fell within the 4 lanes fell within the environmental impact. However, if we choose to go the 4 lanes, then that would bounce us out, and we would have to go back because we would have to look at the different, I guess, I want to say traffic flow, but I'm not sure if that's the correct term. Look at the nuances of the 4 lanes and the movement of it, and that would knock us out, and we would have to create a whole new environmental impact and basically just move us out of the game.
Yeah, thank you, Councilmember Mayor, Councilmember Pastor. You're right on both counts.
Okay.
In June, when we were talking, we were concerned about what's called the environmental envelope.
Okay,
that envelope was set when this original decision was made not to tear down 60 buildings. And that's why we ended up with the 2-lane design to begin with. When we did that, we set a limit and performed our environmental work so that those buildings would not be impacted. So the instruction from the council was go forward and do an analysis, but stay in that, because we knew if we tore down buildings, we would we would now have to reopen the environmental work. So that was in June 20th, and that's the approach that we took. As we did this analysis, one of the things we found is that when you look at the traffic flow, and that is the ability to move through intersections is really what we're talking about. It's really not the width of the lanes, it's how do you get through intersections. And what we found out is that with the 4-lane, it creates log jams at the intersections because of the inability to have dedicated left turn lanes. When the traffic slows down that significantly and you're stopping and going, it creates environmental impact. You have more pollution, you have more noise, you have more vibration. That new bit of information is significant enough that we would have to reopen the environmental with the 4-lane design. We would have to reopen the environmental process, not because of the envelope, but because of now looking at the changes in the traffic flow, which would be considered significant enough that we would have to now relook at that. And the challenge is that now at 13 intersections, you're going to have traffic stopping at greater and more frequent intervals than you would under the existing design. So yes, that's what causes us to reopen the environmental. And there's enough impact that for the FTA to say, we believe it's significant. We want you to redo your traffic study to show us exactly, not from a traffic flow, but from an environmental standpoint, what the traffic under this new design, this 4-lane design, what that will do. And we would have to reopen everything. The entire process would be open, public comment, which is why it would take minimum of a year and up to 18 months to complete that process.
And because of that, then that would knock us out.
That would put us well past the November deadline. And the FTA said there's a few months of grace they can give us from the November deadline, which is why we're not out of it with, even though we're late to submit, even if we stay with the existing design. They said, we can give you a few months, but maybe 6. But if you go 12 to 18 months past, no, you will be suspended and move out and be taken out of the program. And then we'd work on our own, and if and when we decided to move forward, we would then reapply, or we would apply for re-entry into the program. But we would be out of the federal program at that time.
Okay, thank you.
Anyone else? Hearing none, I will call the speakers. Deb Colbert, followed by Dennis McGarry, followed by Roman Ybarra.
Good afternoon to the City Council, to the Mayor, and to all of the project leads. As a resident of the South Phoenix community, I'm very concerned to hear that we would scrap a project of this nature. The growth in our community and the opportunity for our community exist because the light rail will provide access for us. If you think about the 2-lane structure, it will allow greater safety, access to every community. When you start looking at the businesses and the way that the businesses are scheduled to grow and to have resources assigned to them, this is an opportunity for us to have progress and to move forward in the South Phoenix community. It is very important for this light rail to be on schedule, on time, and to look at the fact that the 2-lane structure is actually an adaptable model, according to what Mr. Smith just described. And so, at the end of the day, I don't see why, with our vote having been cast several years ago about this project, that we're at this point to even have the discussion of scrapping a project that provides opportunity for our community. Access to other jobs, access to experiences within the city, access to the ability for our young people to experience educational opportunities. Business owners and those that are renting those businesses have an opportunity to look at the way that businesses are being conducted. We have an opportunity to grow businesses in our community and to open the gates of access to our aging and to make sure that people are safe. So, at the end of the day, what I'm saying is that our community deserves this investment. If we allow this investment to go back, there is no reallocation of these funds to other areas within the city. We're not here to fill potholes. We're here to build an infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak today. I think the overriding concern should be here, not just to get the project done, but to get it done correctly. I haven't heard anything addressed about, on a two-lane situation, what is going to happen if there's an emergency, if the police have to get through, if the fire trucks have to get through, if there's an accident. That entire street could be shut down on a two-lane configuration. The impact to businesses is going to be great regardless of whether it's a two-lane or four-lane. I lived in Los Angeles for 30 years and saw the subway built. I've been here since light rail's been constructed, and I've seen what happens. Businesses close, they don't get the money that they deserve because they were negatively impacted. So what you people need to do is get it right for the best part of the community and the best part of the city. In my opinion, 4 lanes is the way to go for safety, for traffic flow, to get more customers to the businesses in that community, and for allowing the people in that community to make their transit regardless of the method that they use. Thank you.
Thank you. Coming up on deck is Barry McCain, followed by Clayton Jacobs.
Number one, like the gentleman said, is public safety. Last night I was coming back from a community meeting. There was 8 fire ambulances and fire trucks racing down Central. That is not going to happen with the 1 lane, no matter what the video shows. Their perfect world scenario video. It doesn't fit. I don't see why it wasn't put on a street that makes more sense, like 24th Street, that has a college, library, airport access, park and rides that aren't being used. It's already been widened. The Valley Metro meetings were very insulting. It's like the gentleman said, there was 450 questions asked. Where are the answers? At the last meeting, we asked, where can we find these answers? They said they're going to be posting them on a website. We asked if it was going to be before this date. We didn't get an answer. So we like to still know. We're kind of curious still. And they keep saying it's a $1 billion investment in South Phoenix. It's only a $1 billion investment in South Central. That's it. It's not to South Phoenix. The rest of South Phoenix is in shambles. We still have roads with no sidewalks. Main roads like 7th Ave, 7th Street. And back to the emergency vehicle stuff, if they have to go to somewhere on Central and there's something going on, a car accident or a broken down bus, that means they got to go to 7th. There's no other small main streets. So that's 7 blocks out of your way to come back 7 blocks back. That's 14 blocks out of your way to go to an emergency. I just don't know why our safety concerns are being dismissed. And that's really all I have to say. There's a dozen buses that get you from South Phoenix to the light rail in 15 minutes without wasting $1 billion. There's all kinds of transportation to get out of the city. We do not need it. It's not necessary. Downtown is, I got here in 5 minutes. I mean, it's not unnecessary. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council, and staff. Thank you for all your work that you've done. My name is Barry McCain. I'm from Arizona City and Pinal County. For those that do not know, I was born and raised here, so I love City of Phoenix, and anything that will help City of Phoenix, I'm for. As you can see, I'm for the light rail. The reason for that is because the light rail will bring in monies for South Phoenix and infrastructure that we need to be able to develop. As I've developed Pinal County, I understand that this would be the right thing to do. I've got kids who cannot think and breathe. You can't breathe, you can't think, because they have asthma. So the light rail will be good for that. The monies that will bring in for the federal government, that will bring in a lot. This will do everything we need to increase infrastructure that we need in South Phoenix. So the opportunity's there. As far as whether it's 2 or 4, I'll let due process take care of that. Because I know with 2 we can do fine, but with 4, then you have to worry about congestion. This project here is important to the city of Phoenix. the way we're going now, that we just cannot afford to overlook any funds to come into Phoenix, because Phoenix has so much potential. And this would be a missed potential if we did not do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Gabriel Marino. Gabriel Marino. Oh, it's Gabriel? Oh, is he downstairs? Then it will be David Coda.
Yeah, Gabriel Moreno.
David Coda. Followed by Darlene Marnell.
My name is Gabriel Moreno. I believe it's a bad idea, and I have a lot of reasons for it, but I'm just going to share a few of them with you. They've already spoke on a couple of reasons, and that would be the traffic congestion. The congestion is already bad as it is. You know, I noticed there's a lot of people here in favor of it, you know. But most of the people that are in favor of it don't seem to live in South Phoenix, so I don't even know why they're even for it, you know? We're the ones who live there. I was born in South Phoenix, you know? And I think that with the emergency vehicles that can't get through South Phoenix, whether it be the firefighters or the law enforcement, I think it's gonna create a lot of problems for people that have businesses. And if the traffic flow is too slow and they can't get to their business on time or whatever, I wouldn't worry about their business, because after construction starts, they won't have a business. They'll lose it because of access, because the people don't go where there's a lot of where there's no flow in the to get to the location. I think when this was voted on, I don't think there was any details described on the people that voted in favor of it. Because I noticed there's a lot of people in favor of it here, you know? But I also noticed that most of the people here don't even live there, you know? And, you know, I mean, you know, what is it gonna benefit you? You know, everybody has an agenda and an interest in it, but, you know, I mean, what's in it for you, you know? Is it, for the contractors, there's probably, you know, it's probably a good deal, because they're gonna make all that money, you know? But as far as transportation in South Phoenix, I just don't see it. I think it needs to be scrapped.
Thank you for having me. My name is David Cota, and I live in South Phoenix. And I have a small business in South Phoenix. And I support the light rail. I support the city of Phoenix bringing infrastructure to South Phoenix. I'm a little nervous, so bear with me. I think we need this, especially in South Phoenix, to grow and to be added into the big picture as like Mesa and downtown Phoenix. I'm sure that these engineers, these fine engineers that are going to be watched by the federal government for the dollars that are going to be spent, they've taken every step to make sure it's safe, reliable, access to everybody, affordable. So I am in favor of this light rail, and I would ask you to vote yes for the light rail to bring this to South Phoenix. We need it. Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Darlene Barnwell. Following her is Ramona Flick. Darlene? Did you want to speak? Okay.
You want to bring the microphone?
We'll bring the microphone to you.
Stay right there.
Excuse me. I've got some notes here. My name is Ramona Flick, and I live in District 8, I think. Anyway, I have lived in South Phoenix for 54 years, and I've enjoyed it. It's really great. But I'm against the light rail. And I live in the same house all these years, about 2 blocks south of Baseline and right near Central, not too far from Central's. I went to the last meeting in South Phoenix, and I'm really concerned about South Phoenix. A lot of my friends and neighbors are not for this project. I heard something say about all the cars. I don't know how that came into all of this, but we do have a lot of cars in South Phoenix. Baseline is a very well-traveled road. And on the street that I live, there's maybe 2 or 3 cars for a household. So we do have cars. As I said before, I've looked down Central and I've thought about what we have on Central. We have churches. There's a couple of churches there on South Phoenix, South Central. We have a school there, a Catholic school. Right on Alta Vista, we have a senior center. We have there's other businesses. I remember when they were going to put in
I need you to wrap up, please.
They were going to put in the rail in North Phoenix. It closed down a business that I enjoyed having.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Next is Ramona. Following her is Perry Elam, and then Lincoln Ragsdale Jr.
I think it was Rose Moreno. Did you say Rose Moreno?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you. I am a real estate agent here in Arizona, and everybody knows this probably, but I'd like to state it again. Streets in South Phoenix are terrible. The sidewalks are dangerous. I know people who have, with the sidewalks, they have seriously been injured. There's areas with sewer gases, smells, and all of a sudden, South Phoenix is so important. You know, in other words, why all this attention, but it's all on South Central. City Council, Ruben Gallegos, Ed Pastor, Greg Staton, Kate Gallegos, and all of those that are for it. In asking some of you why, your answer has been for development. As hard as you are fighting for it, there must be some great gain somewhere. And great gain is good, but not at the cost of others. Those losing in property, in business, and especially in emergency services that nobody has paid any attention to. So where is the gain? So instead of being a bully, make the offer that they can't resist. And you know that if you make that offer to them, you know, especially for all of them that will be at loss, you know, that offer hasn't been made. So if you do make it, maybe they won't resist it.
Thank you.
My
My name is Perry Elam. I am a longtime resident of South Phoenix, born and raised. I'm here today on behalf of the blue shirts and the orange shirts to express my support for the two-lane South Central Light Rail. But I'm a little concerned, not so much about the light rail, but about this vote of the body. You know, I'm kind of concerned because I think about the struggle that my ancestors went through. They died and they cried and they went through turmoil and suffered for that powerful thing we call the right to vote. Our community voted for the light rail. And now we're here today to talk about disavowing the vote of the people, the voice of the people, the most cherished.
Please, let him speak.
The most cherished part of our freedom. You look around, there are countries today who wish they had the opportunity to voice themselves. And we're sitting here today talking about we're going to muffle and mute the voice of our people. We voted for the light rail. We voted to move forward. It's not about South Phoenix, because I'm going to tell you, it's not a black thing, a white thing, a brown thing, a red thing, or a yellow thing. It's about doing the right thing. And what we've got to do today is I want each of you to kind of think about what we're here for. Are we here for individuals? Are we here for the growth and development of our community? We need to bring our community together. We've been divided for too long. It's time now we come together. Let's be a community of pride. Let's be a community of one. Do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Ragsdale? Followed by Nicholas Serwick.
Wow, that was a good one, wasn't it?
I know, I wouldn't mess with him.
I won't have to come back after Reverend. Anyway, I'm Lincoln Ragsdale Jr. We have two pieces of property over there on the Central Avenue. I have had the experience of the light rail on 1100 East Jefferson Street and 1140 East Washington Street, so I've had the impact of the light rail. Also, so I didn't expect ever to really have to experience it again, but I see it's running down South Central, so I will experience it again. First, I want to say I am for the light rail. I just want clarity in regards to the process, and that I am for the 4-lane from the experience of the 11th Street and Washington Street experience. Mr. Smith articulated how in his verbal communication he talked to someone at the federal government, but I would like to see a request in writing to see what the response is, because that's his opinion. And I've heard Mr. Smith say different things, and I understand his job is to push through the project. So he told me if it's 2 lanes or 4 lanes, it doesn't matter to him. His job is to really do the project. So in regards to his statement, which he said, and I know he wants to rail because it does not delay the project. He says, if the city does not submit an extension, he says, if the city does not make an extension, you would request him to make an extension. So that isn't even on the page, because that would be necessary for him to do that so we could have the grace period. Also, they said if we did the 4-lane, it would be a $4 million increase, which is only 0.01% of the $700 million, which is, what, 3/4 of $1 billion to do this project. So that's really not an important number, since it is going to be over budget and over time from past experience. I am, of course, you know, a business person along that route. And in going to the presentations, out of the 6 presentations, I went to 3 of them. I know, I hope I don't go over time, but in regards to...
You're over time.
Okay. In regards to the presentation was not consistent. It says here in this group here on page 19 that it was always the same presentation. If you had asked the presenter, he did modify the presentation after the second or third meeting.
Thank you very much. Nicholas? followed by Michael Kelly and Millie Gonzalez Scott.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, members of the council. My name is Nicholas Sarwark. Our family has a small business that's been in this city since 1942. It's not in South Phoenix. It's at 16th Street in Van Buren. And the construction that's occurred on the street to upgrade our infrastructure has been detrimental to the amount of money we're able to make. We have fewer customers because we have less traffic. I know what it feels like as a small business owner to see your traffic flow go away and have to try and balance that budget and last through it. And those are temporary upgrades. If this light rail configuration goes in, two things are going to happen. We are going to commit the city of Phoenix to rail for at least 2 decades. Central Avenue is going to have a train on it for 20 years. None of us could have predicted Uber was going to take over the transportation market 10 years ago. How are we so wise to know that 20 years from now, rail is going to be the best way to get from North Phoenix to South Phoenix? The second thing is those businesses along Central Avenue will close. They cannot take that traffic. I was driving back from Levine last night, and I got to the intersection of 24th Street and Jefferson. And if I count 4 corners on that intersection, 3 out of the 4 have nothing. The light rail displaces businesses. It's a new option. It's something different. But there's going to be winners and losers. Valley Metro and the contractors that work on it will win. And the businesses that have already built this community will lose. Those are the things we know for sure. Whether the federal money actually comes through, we have no idea. If the administration changes, if the Congress changes, any number of things can happen. But we know those businesses will close. And the way these presentations were made, it was very clear that the people supporting light rail are willing to step over the corpses of those businesses to get that federal grant money. And that's why this whole project needs to stop. Again, thank you. I'm Nicholas Sarwark.
Come on, have respect.
Mayor Williams, City Council members, thank you again for this opportunity to speak in support of South Central Light Rail. First of all, I would like to present this letter of support from the one of the congressmen and some other additional information to City Council. And as that's being done, there was a comment that a number of people that are being involved in this are not from South Phoenix. Could the people from South Phoenix raise your hand?
How about South Central?
South Phoenix. As I just asked the question, as you can see, some people have been confronted, some people have been spit upon, and some people have been threatened, and I appreciate the level of discourse that is taking place here. Thank you for this positive opportunity. I got 3 points. One is, as a proud South Phoenix resident, and a volunteer, I just want to mention that I've been involved in rapid transit since 1989, since Valtrans, and many of you remember that. Secondly, you've heard all the arguments, and you're still hearing some of them now, the pros and cons, so I won't even bother to go over those. But what I will do is give you evidence of 1,000 letters that are primarily from South Phoenix residents, and also we received 1,600 emails, and 85% of those are from South Phoenix residents. And finally, last but not least, I encourage you, the City of Phoenix, and City Council to move this project forward as it stands. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. The city clerk's behind you. If you want to set those down right there, then we will have staff get them later. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Millie Gonzalez Scott, and I own a business in the city of Phoenix. I own a recruiting and staffing business, and the reason I'm here is because I have a significant challenge of finding individuals that are able to take jobs because they don't have transportation, primarily coming from South Phoenix. And so it's heartbreaking to know that folks that need jobs can't go to their jobs unless they're locally right there because they don't have transportation. And some of the jobs are minimum wage jobs, which means those individuals cannot afford to buy a car, pay insurance, and all the costs associated with a vehicle. So public transportation is the only choice they have. And I urge you to approve the light rail. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Sparky Smith, followed by Clovis Campbell, and then William Rivera.
Thank you, Mayor Williams and council members. I was here on the special meeting back on June the 20th and sat out here and listened to everything for the entire meeting, went home and watched it again. And on June the 27th, the Wall Street Journal published a report called The Future of Cities, What Driverless Cars Will Bring to Cities. City planners say self-driving cars could mean better public transit, more green space, and less congestion, but also more urban sprawl and greater inequality. And the greater inequality is what I wish to speak to. When you read this report and everything about these cities, it basically is about what technology is going to do to us. 100 years ago, modern technology rewrote our way of life. It was called an automobile. Right now, we're in the throes of technology rewriting the way we're going to live our lives. And to the point that an earlier speaker made, it's going to uproot everything. And why in God's name would we commit to light rail, which is the least flexible thing that you could possibly do to a city? Because these jobs are going to move everywhere. This technology is going to change where people's jobs are. Somebody, Mr. Bailey, I want to thank you. As a farmer facilitator, I read your report and it's awesome. And if you council people hadn't read it in detail, I really encourage you to go to page 14. He mentioned it. It's the most important thing that you can possibly read in that whole report, of his report. And that is what's going on in South Phoenix. I went down there and spent a better part of a day talking to business owners up and down Central. And here's the thing that his report says, it's a consensus of the opinion of the people up and down South Phoenix, the business owners. Nobody is listening. They don't want light rail. They want sidewalks, streets, and upgrades of their local neighborhoods.
Good afternoon, Mayor Williams, council members. I won't need to take up 2 minutes because everybody said a lot of things that we need to know already. But the main thing that I want to talk about is just the fact that as a lifelong resident of Phoenix and South Phoenix and understanding the process and things that happen in this city, Perry Elam took a lot of the thunder that I wanted to talk about. The fact that, and that's fine, because the fact that our citizens voted for this light rail project. People took time to go to the polls, register to vote, exercise the right and the privilege that people have fought for many years. And the fact that this council refuses to listen to what people have to say, refuses to understand the fact that you too were voted into office and can be voted out. The fact that you asked us that you want to talk about what we've already decided on. You work for us. We don't work for you. You work for us. And I think you need to understand that when people speak and when we've exercised the right that we've had for so long and have fought so hard for, and for you all to sit up there and have the unmitigated gall to take this opportunity away from us, I think that we need to start looking at who's sitting there and he needs to be removed. And I ask the people here to stand up and understand that we have a right to this thing. We have a right to this program. We've asked for it. We voted for it. We deserve it. 2 lanes, 4 lanes, the gentleman has already told us 4-lane is not an option. And if we talk about that option, the next option will be voting some people out.
Thank you. William Rivera. William Rivera, followed by, I'm going to screw this up, Rudy Kolaja. And that will, then followed Victor Vidalis. Go ahead. Just, if you give me your name, please.
I don't hear you.
Could you speak your name? I have a feeling I know.
My name is Rudy Kolaya.
Got it. Thank you.
I am highly experienced in transit design and operations, most of it from the best transit system in the world, and you could benefit from what I have to say. First, a little bit of history, which may be shocking to you. When Rick Simonetta came to the town to build the light rail here some 20 years ago, he stated at WTS reception for him that he didn't want the job because it was a wrong project to build. Steve Banta, who was next one, I held a long discussion with him about light rail, and he told me that this light rail, which was in place, was never to be built. He agreed with all statements I made to him. Unfortunately, at public hearing, Friends of Transit, he denied all of it and tried to discredit my comments and my qualification. I felt offended. But the third thing is this. I served many years on Transportation Research Board in transit research when one of the meetings, Federal Transit Administration official approached me and stated to me that he is monitoring the progress. He started telling me how bad it is. I wonder, top officials knew then there was a wrong application of light rail, and we built more of it. Well, I tell you what needs to be done. I hope you let me finish at least a couple of sentences because nobody else will tell you. You need to get back to the drawing board. This valley needs a desperately transit system based on area-wide. You need to build underground metro based on sound study. That underground would cut travel time by 2/3, and as a result of it, would cut the traffic by half.
Thank you.
Then, only then you design light rail, then you design buses outside and create the pedestrian malls, and the system will serve everybody, not just parts of the city.
Thank you.
It's too bad you don't give
Your time's up. Okay. William Rivera, and then Victor. Oh, just Councilman DeCiccio, are you on the phone?
I am, Mayor. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. William Rivera? Victor? Oh, here comes Victor. And then Benjamin Piercy or Percy? Piercy will follow Victor.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Council. I'm here with my wife, and my wife has donated her speaking time, and just in case I go a few seconds over.
I'm sorry, nobody can donate today.
Okay. I've owned a small business in South Phoenix for the past 14 years. We're located at 6427 South Central Avenue. We own multiple commercial residential properties on South Central. I was born and raised in South Phoenix, and like many here, have also chose to raise our families in South Phoenix. My wife and I have also chose to raise our 5 children in our hometown. As many of you know, I spent thousands of hours on this project. volunteering my time, my talent, my resources, and trying to make the portion of our city a better place to live for my children and the future of their children. In the past 4 years, this time commitment has really intensified with light rail, and I know how much sacrifice it takes to be part of the design process, to put our fingerprints on this design, and how essential it is for community's voice to be heard, especially in those whose businesses will be primarily impacted, like mine, on Central Avenue in St. Catharines. I'm here to express my support for the light rail. Although I support light rail, I am not satisfied with the status quo. Most people in our community aren't satisfied with the status quo. We want a world-class project. We're the 5th largest city in this country, and we need to start acting like it. We can't continue to grow in this unsustainable manner. We have to build options for those who don't have the ability to own a car. We now understand more fully through this process the inequities and why we live in such a harsh environment. We're not asking council not only to vote on the rail today, but also to look at all the other things that need to be done, including creating a neighborhood improvement plan that creates a better, brighter future for those who live here. We must soften the harsh edges of our built environment. We need the design of a healthy, safe community, providing the promised investment and necessary infrastructure from South Phoenix's annexation in 1961. We need reliable transportation options for all income levels to help connect our community to opportunities throughout the rest of the valley.
Thank you.
Thank you. God bless you guys, and I hope you have the wisdom to make the right decision.
Did William Rivera come up? Was he downstairs? Okay. Benjamin Piercy? Oh, right there you are, sorry. Followed by Haley Ritter.
Oh, yes, I only have 2 things to say. One, I'm against the light rail, and 2, for the people who are booing and yelling time, can you please have some respect for the remaining people and not do that? That's all.
Haley Ritter, followed by Talonia Adams, and then Walter Gray.
Greetings, Mayor and City Council. It's good to see you all again. I know that you've supported a lot of bicycle infrastructure. I'm a resident of the Westwood community. Ms. Pastor, you've done an excellent job in running our portion of the city, and I just want to thank you for all the improvements you made on bicycle infrastructure. I was a huge supporter of the light rail back in 2000 when I still lived in Tempe after school at ASU, and I collected signatures to get that thing on the ballot on my bicycle running around the city, because all of you know, well, most of you know, I have epilepsy and I'm an interpreter now for the deaf community, so I need the public infrastructure to support my livelihood and my ability to serve the deaf community. So I'm a huge supporter of the 2-lane project as it is, because a lot of the streets that have those 2 lanes are very successful traffic flow. They run smoothly, and they're good, excellent non-congestion areas. I know I live just off of Camelback and 23rd Avenue, and Camelback gets backed up with traffic because it's got too many lanes. It's like a sitting freeway all the time. So I'm extremely excited about this project, and I want to see it go forward as is with the 2-lane style that was originally voted in. I thank all of you for being here and voicing your concerns, because I understand there's a lot of fears and there's a lot of insecurity about what's going to happen, but a lot of businesses that have been there in South Phoenix, my mother used to live in South Phoenix, I used to visit her all the time on my bicycle, will be able to recover from this, because I truly believe that we need this infrastructure. A lot of people like me travel this way, and we need that extra support. So great job in moving forward, and I'm so proud of all of you. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, we'll let you go first, and then we'll have her.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Walt Gray. I'm from West Phoenix. I've lived in West Phoenix 35 years. I've been a community activist for 16 years. I particularly try to advocate for the working poor and poor. I think light rail for South Phoenix will change South Central will not change the community. I think we've seen that with I-10, people displaced by I-10, although businesses develop. Same thing with Jefferson and Washington and 19th Avenue, the airport, all those projects displace people. Many of those people, some of those people are in West Phoenix, and that's fine, except we're not doing much better than they were doing before. And if you want to really improve South Phoenix, and the point is that there are multiple things that have to be done for South Phoenix. And to do those, my particular thing that I try to encourage is workforce development. If you do job training within the community, that will attract jobs to the community and qualify the people for higher level jobs, which should include jobs downtown. And that's a close transit up to downtown. Right now, we have too many people in service jobs, and we need to upgrade the people so that they can do higher level work. I think that the vote, 70%, I think I voted for it, for transportation 2050. But it'd be interesting to know what South Phoenix voted for transportation 2050. And
I need you to wrap up, please.
I'm wrapped up.
Thank you. And she will be followed by Aubrey Barnwell and Dee Dee Barker.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. My name is Tanya Adams, and I'm here to speak in support of the light rail. I agree with a lot of the sentiment here, and I'm so grateful for the turnout, in part because South Phoenix needs help. South Phoenix needs to join this vibrant economy and commerce, and that the rest of Phoenix has enjoyed for many years. I was born in South Phoenix, and when people say we need shade, they're right. We need shade infrastructure. We need trees. We need sidewalks. We need community centers. We need places for kids. We need public transportation. And when you're dealing with a public asset of this magnitude, written by the federal government, under this Ladders of Opportunity Transportation Empowerment Pilot Program, right? 7 cities, Phoenix was one of them. It was about upward mobility. It was about equity. It was about doing things, not just to leave a train, but to cure generational poverty, generational issues. And we would like to see equity. And it's not an either or, sidewalks and buses and new routes, right? We need both. We need light rail, and we need layers of support from this council in every district fighting for South Phoenix, every inch of Phoenix, including all of those kids and those families where the ridership numbers are born, right? We have the light rail. Why? Because people in South Phoenix have ridership numbers. And I've attended these meetings with Scott Smith. And he said, you know, we have better ridership than Seattle when I talked about Seattle's program. That's great. That's great that we have better ridership, but that shouldn't be a point of pride. A ridership number should say to this city, we have more to do by the people that are relying on public transit.
Thank you. Dee Dee will be followed Dave Kreider. Dee Dee's next, and then Dave Kreider. Pardon me? Oh, Aubrey, I'm sorry. Dee Dee, could you let him go first? I just skipped right over him, and then you can follow, please.
Mayor, City Council, thank you for this opportunity to speak. As many of you know, my father pastored for 39 years in the South Phoenix area and worked very diligently at seeing that the light rail would come to Phoenix. It was his hope that it would first of all go to South Phoenix, but it came downtown and went to Tempe and went to Mesa and went around. And so his hope and desire was that it would eventually, and promise that it would get to South Phoenix. And this is the opportunity to fulfill that promise to him. He worked very diligently along with a number of other pastors in that. And so I've been pastoring now for almost 15 years in South Phoenix, and I recognize that this is a great opportunity for South Phoenix to experience development that they have not experienced before, opportunity that has not been experienced before. I'm grateful in regards to the presentation that was done, in regards to identifying the difference between the 2-lane and the 4-lane. I think it was excellently done in communicating to the community, because I think the community did not understand the difference between the 4-lane and the 2-lane. But I think that demonstration in the video really helped to bring clarity in that. And so I'm definitely in support of the 2-lane. I believe that there are a number of individuals who are along with me, a number of pastors who are standing with me in regards to that. So I would thank you for making that decision today, that we will have 2-lane light rail in South Phoenix. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for your patience, Dee Dee.
Oh, you're welcome. I take the bus. Some people say, we can't talk to you, you're too patient. So anyway, Mayor, City Council, I'm in District 7, and I admit, like, I've been addicted to the bus system because it does work for me. And I was on disability, and thanks to the transit system, I had to chase enough buses that I'm back, okay? So I'm here just to say that I listened to the CEO from Valley Metro, and I thought that he made a good point here. We talk about mode an awful lot. Do we talk about the values of the bus system? I hear a lot of people, you know, say, hey, we've got people that don't have cars. You know, we pour our heart out to them. Did you ever think of the benefit that maybe when you left your car home, not only the people that you met, the fact that you saved some money, the fact that you got out and exercise? So I am not for building the train. I have been going down to, I've been riding the bus for 3 decades, and I did come here on the train. But if the train wasn't there, I would have come on the bus. And I do have a folding bicycle because I connect everything with it. But at one time, back in the 80s, I was caught down in South Phoenix, and, you know, without any ride, no cell phone, no internet, or anybody to pick me up. And may I have this moment to say that the bus came, the last bus, and took me home. So I do believe in that. Should I stop talking, Mayor?
I am concerned about the dog that's going in the middle of the aisle. Maybe she could come down front and sit in one of the front seats with the dog. Wouldn't that make it easier for you? Especially easier for the dog? Could staff help her, please? Thank you. I'm sorry, Dee Dee. It just seems like I'm picking on you, and I don't mean to.
Well, no, but hey, I'm with the persons with disabilities and the dogs, so I'll stop anytime for that, so that's fine. Okay, so no, I want to make a point. I am not for this particular mode going down there. You want to build infrastructure, everybody, yes. I am for South Phoenix having the very best system, but this is not the best answer. You can get off at the bus system closer to where you're going, and the riders, we should appreciate the riders, is you don't have to walk as far in the hot sun when you use the bus. The buses are clean burning. They have a driver there that's highly trained, and when people are misbehaving, there's more hands-on there at the bus than if you are on a driver with a light rail that's in a locked compartment, because the transit isn't always there, and they've let me know they know how to throw somebody off, but they don't know directions of different places. I've asked them, such as the bus driver and the people that are on the bus. Now, what I am proposing is the fact I wrote this on the internet in answer to this
I need you to
particular
wrap up.
meeting. The fact is that you're so afraid of losing $500 million of money. People, it's all our money. That money, we should be conservative up at the federal level. We can use our local money, fix this system, and...
Thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you. Dave Kreider, followed by Maris Mitchell. We don't need him.
Thank you, Mayor Williams and members of the City Council. I'm Dave Kreider. I'm with Downtown Phoenix, Inc. But probably more importantly, I live and work on Central Avenue in District 4 and in District 7 in the part of Central Avenue that has light rail. My neighbors, my coworkers, and I have great transit access to the largest employment concentration in the region, high-skilled jobs in tech and health sciences and aviation, and many other jobs, hundreds of thousands of them in areas across the whole spectrum of skills. We have great access to K-12 options and university undergraduate and graduate education from Arizona State University, University of Arizona, and Northern Arizona University. We have the best medical facilities in our entire region, with more to come with the expansion of Creighton's Medical School, which happens to be right across the tracks from the corporate headquarters of Banner, the largest employer in the state of Arizona. We have access to the great performing arts, live music, and sports that have come to define downtown, and we have access to one of the world's great airports, where there are tens of thousands of jobs associated with it. And of course, once you're at Sky Harbor, 2 miles of runway will get you anywhere in the world. So why should I have all this access when my address is North Central and not South Central? I think this light rail really gives us an incredible opportunity to tie our community together, and we can fix that today by reconfirming our long-term commitment to the 2-lane South Central light rail extension. Thank you.
Good afternoon, Council. My name is Maurice Mitchell. I'd like to start out with saying that quite some time ago, the creator of the Vegas monorail offered to give us a train for free, and we refused it. I had one question at your meeting that was not answered, and it was, what can the train do that the bus can't? I can tell you what it can't do. They claim that it's electric, so it's going to be better for the environment, though with the traffic that it's going to cause, it's going to lose that appeal because it's going to create more pollution. It can't be changed. A bus route can, if a route is not being used, it can be just suspended, or it can be changed to meet the changes of the community. Once it's in where it's at. It cannot work independent of the bus system. Without the bus system, it is useless because you need the bus to get to the light rail because, again, it's in a fixed place. The question is, what are you trying to achieve? Meeting the needs of the customer? A bus is smaller than the train, so therefore, if somebody's being belligerent or a problem on the bus driver stops on the very next and puts you off that bus. A train is so long and it's so sealed with the driver, it's electric, it's so automated, it doesn't even have to be steered. No one's gonna see what's going on in the back of the train. The other part is a personal nature, is if somebody's running late, they broke the heel of their shoe and they're running to make that bus. And we've all, and at one time, if we have not been there ourselves, have seen somebody do it. The bus has the option, the bus driver has the option to have mercy and stop and let that person on. That long train is going to be automated. It's not going to see, it's not going to have the same effect, that personal effect of for the customer. I believe that you should do the right thing and use the money for what South Phoenix is lacking in, for what it needs, or keep the money. But don't give us a train we don't need just to receive federal matching money to fill the pockets of those that it won't affect.
Thank you.
Once you put it, oh, my 2 minutes is up?
Your time's
sorry.
up. Thank you. Next is John Culver, followed by Gary Herrick. John Culver. And then Gregory Herrick. Then will be Michael Williams.
Mayor Williams, Council, my name is John Culver. I'm a longtime Arizona resident. I've lived here most of my life. My wife is 4th generation. Her family started a business in South Phoenix here, still in existence. I started a business with her about 22 years ago. We started in Gilbert, Arizona. We liked the South Phoenix area. We liked what was going on with the projected Beyond the Banks developments. The light rail, the possibility of light rail coming. And we located our business here approximately 2009, 2010, with about 5 employees. Our company now is we're south of the river bottom, between Broadway and the river bottom area. Our company now has grown from approximately 4 to 6 employees to 101 employees. We occupy 12 parcels in this area. One of my dear friends is fronting Central Avenue with approximately 7 acres and 175 employees, and he's there for the same reason. We're there because it is a place we want to be. It's, we know what light rail brings. I have a location on Van Buren and 32nd Street, very close to light rail, and we're here to support the 2-lane option that was voted in before, and we want to make sure that our vote was heard, and let you know that we're proud of the fact that we're part of the community. We have got a number of those employees that have bought houses in South Phoenix because of where we are located. We also utilize upwards of 500 temps in addition to those employees about 5 months a year. Those temps need access to our business. This does that.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Greg Herrick. My wife and I moved here in June 2015 to South Phoenix. We live between the Sevens, and we're generally supporters of high-capacity transit, but we do not support this South Central Light Rail extension. My most important focus is an efficient and functional infrastructure along with careful expenditures of public funds. And I think this project is a disaster on both fronts. The 4-lane is horrid, and the 2-lane, the terribleness of the 4-lane distracts you from how bad the 2-lane is as well. And so when I hear that if 1 lane is blocked in the 2-lane format, that we'll just send vehicles down the other lane the wrong way to get to an emergency, that is preposterous. That is terrible. And so the 2-lane is not good, the 4-lane is not good. I think you were way too premature in ruling out a modern streetcar for South Central. You're touting the virtues, you're building the thing in Tempe, and yet somehow it's just not going to work in South Phoenix. That's ridiculous. Or 24th Street would be a better place for light rail. I'm not anti-light rail. I'm anti-light rail on South Central. Now, when it comes to these funds, I went through the Valley Metro documents, and this funding went from a $500 million estimate for 2034 in 2014, and now in 2018, with a due date of 2023, it's gone to $965 million. It sounds like that as soon as more government money becomes available, oh, it costs more, and we're spending more money on that, and we're not getting anything more for it. And then also, we need to consider that this is only 5.5 miles of light rail that connects Baseline to South Central. Anything that you talk about, oh, it can take you to ASU, oh, it can take you to the airport, once the bus gets you to Central Avenue, to downtown, it's the same as it ever was.
Thank you. We have Michael Williams, followed Edward Sanchez follows.
I'm clearly not Michael Williams, but he was sitting behind me and had to leave. He just wanted me to tell you to support the 2-lane infrastructure.
Okay.
He was wearing
Thank
this
you.
T-shirt, that's why I put it on.
Okay. What's he wearing?
These T-shirts.
Okay. Edward Sanchez and then Gary Walters.
Council members and Madam Mayor, I thank you for holding this meeting today to hear the voice of the community.
My name is Eduardo Sanchez. I have lived along Central Avenue in South Phoenix for my entire life. It is my home and I never plan to leave. Oh, lost my spot already. I'm here today to plead with you to vote to not allow this monstrosity into our community. It will absolutely destroy the community beyond repair. It is true that our community does need better transportation, but the light rail is not the answer. What we need are new buses, more frequent buses, and better bus stops with shade. We need to allocate money on fixing our crumbling infrastructure. We need more sidewalks, more trees, and better lit streets. We don't need a light rail. My biggest fear with this light rail is that it will destroy the history and the community along Central Avenue. Everyone that lives in South Phoenix, whether you're for or against it, knows that Central Avenue is the heart of South Phoenix. This light rail will fundamentally change South Phoenix forever. It will effectively split South Phoenix in two. It will bring crime and gentrification, and it will displace many residents along Central. Just like the expansion of Sky Harbor Airport obliterated the Golden Gate Barrio community in the 70s and 80s, this will have a similar effect. I sincerely ask the City Council to save our beloved community. Thank you.
I need to hold that. Eric has to leave in about 2 minutes, and the councilwoman has a question.
I have a question, Eric. Did you change your presentations, or there was a comment to that, so I'm just curious.
No, that's a very, very good question. Thank you for asking. Yes, the presentations did change over the course. After the first presentation, I felt that there was a sense of sales in that presentation, and I decided that that was not the spirit that I wanted in the presentation. So originally there were 4 videos. I cut 2 of the videos. Because I felt it was not my place or not the point of those meetings to sell the project. So we cut those, and some other minor changes. The voiceover for the videos was changed because the person was very enthusiastic, and it seemed almost as if they were trying to sell one version or the other, so we changed the voiceover. And let's see, any other changes that happened? Obviously, different questions at different meetings, but that's what would have changed over the course of the meetings.
So what I'm hearing is material didn't change. What changed were it collapsed from 4 to 2 videos, and you were really wanted it to demonstrate that you were neutral and you wanted to facilitate the conversation versus having something on. Or trying to sell it, I guess.
Absolutely.
That's using the term sell, so.
And just so you know, part of the reason I felt that way is from talking to folks after the meetings. Lincoln, who actually spoke at the microphone earlier, he said, did you notice that the word said, "as you can see"? And it seems like they're trying to talk down to us. And I was like, that's nothing I would have caught in the script. And so thank you for sharing that. And so, again, the voice of the community helped make the meetings better as they went on.
Okay. Vice Mayor?
Thank you. You didn't make the video, correct?
Correct.
I would argue I went to 2 of the meetings, so it sounds like after you made the change based on what you described. I thought the meetings did sell it, so I appreciate you maybe recognizing that and changing it, but I still thought that was the case. You didn't put the videos together yourself.
Correct.
Who did?
The Valley Metro and the engineering teams.
Right. Again, it's not necessarily a reflection on you, but did the neighbors get to put together a video? No. So I guess I would ask, but before you leave, I'm sorry you have to go. So there was a question about, so at the meetings I was at, first you were going to put the questions out, I believe it was September 21st. I think that's what had been said. And then you were going to put them on as you went because you were getting the answers kind of as you go, so why make people wait? Somebody said they couldn't find the questions. The questions are out there. All the questions are answered. So if somebody could get with that gentleman and specifically like maybe walk them to those answers. They just no, they talked to you. Okay, gotcha. I didn't realize. I'm sorry. Thank you. I appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilman?
Mayor, after the first meeting, there's a couple council members there. We actually talked to the city manager and to Mario and said, you know, it's kind of one-sided. These videos are all pro light rail, which is good for those that are pro 2 lanes, but it doesn't really give a fair playing field for those that are supportive of 4 lanes. So I asked personally that we try to make it as neutral as possible, and I think you did that. Also, there was some individuals that asked to put it on the questions on the website, right? And you were able to do that too.
The idea to put the question on the website actually came from someone on the Valley Metro team. Originally, I was just collecting them for my report, and she suggested, hey, why don't we put them on the website, which was a fantastic idea, again, aiding in transparency. So we announced that, I believe, at the 3rd meeting, and folks were upset that they weren't already there. And I apologize that they weren't, but it actually came from a suggestion from that team to aid in that transparency.
Okay.
One last question before he leaves.
Okay.
You were hired for what reason? Was it to get rid of the light rail, to find out if the community wanted 4 lanes or no light rail, or was it to find out if there's 2 lanes or 4 lanes?
So the directive that I understood was get the pulse of the community on 2 lanes versus 4 lanes. I believe I took it maybe a little bit beyond that, because my idea of getting the pulse of the community means what is the community feeling, and I think that there was some more conversation outside of 2 lanes, 4 lanes that came up, and I threw myself into those conversations because I wanted to make sure that I understood.
Vice Mayor.
Thank you. And Eric, who paid your salary?
Hill Consulting?
Please, enough.
Oh, I know. I definitely know. So I'm sorry, Hill Consult, so some neutral entity? Right.
Vice Mayor, just to correct, Hill Consulting is one of our project, is the project oversight, and so we latched him on to the Hill Consulting contract, but they're already working on the project.
Okay. That's not that independent. So
we come on, we did that so we could process compensation.
Okay.
Please.
So I guess appreciate the opportunity for people to say, but I had some issues. Again, it's not a reflection on Mr. Bailey. It's a job. He took it. But the idea that this was some sort of neutral level playing field like the Super Bowl or something, I don't think that's, you're showing videos from one side and you're basically being paid by one side. I guess I just don't want anybody in the audience to think that that's just a completely, I wouldn't feel that way if I was coming to those meetings. And in fact, I know this because I did go to the meetings. So again, there's nothing you can do about that. It's a gig, you took it. But I did want to say that while you were still here, just to hear my thoughts on it. It's not exactly a level playing field. It's sloped a little bit downhill in Valley Metro's favor.
That's a fair assessment. Based
would you tell her out in the audience then? Thanks.
But I hope that you can see in the report that my point of view isn't for or against rail. My point of view is my pages of notes in listening to protesters and people who are for and people who are against. And in the report, that's why I added the addendum, because there were so many conversations I had outside of 2 lanes versus 4 lanes. I don't know if Valley Metro wanted me to put that in there or the City Council wanted me to put that in there, but I felt it was important, so I did.
And again, Mayor, it's not necessarily a reflection on your work, fine report and everything, but I think you can see if you were sitting in the audience, you wanted the 4 lanes or you didn't want light rail at all, you wouldn't necessarily think this was completely unbiased, I had a completely fair shake. I wouldn't if I was sitting in those seats, just based on the nature of what I just said.
Okay.
Here, thank you.
Thank you.
I have-
Please. Because he needs to leave, so.
I forget you're oh, you might be speaking now. Sorry. The gentleman alluded to page 14. And so I think one of the items that came out on page 14 is very clear regarding South Central. And it's a theme. It was a theme that through the conversations you heard with the community. And it's a strong theme that I feel my colleagues and those around us that can look at the theme really make some impact for the future. But the theme says, another theme that, I need glasses now, that course through many of the conversation is perceived lack of attention to South Central Phoenix community has received in areas of missing sidewalks, street maintenance, education, and crime. Many citizens are concerned that the city is ignoring the request to solve certain problems and moving to solve the light rail problem instead. I think, in me knowing South Phoenix, being very proud of what has happened within South Phoenix, that these are themes not only in South Phoenix, but these are themes in West Phoenix, Central Phoenix, Sunny Slope, many different areas in North, and there are themes throughout. There's just certain pockets of neighborhoods that feel neglected. I also feel that through your work, because it has to do with light rail, that these themes now have risen to the top that we can look at. So I want to say, through your work, even though, you know, biased, not biased, I personally don't think you're biased, because I had a long conversation with you when I was first introduced by Mayor Thelda Williams in our strategic plan, and I at that moment felt that you were a neutral party because you had no connection to any of this, but that you were trained into listening, which is key in these pieces, and making decisions, that you knew what to listen for and to hear the concerns of the community. And I want to thank you for the addendum, because the addendum then has demonstrated all the different concerns that are happening that we, for whatever reason, didn't have the capacity or the ability to communicate to the citizens of South Phoenix. So I just want to put that on the record and want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Okay. All right. Thank you, Eric. I appreciate the work you've done. I think you are a good professional facilitator. From my perspective, council's the one that wanted these meetings held. We wanted you hired because we know your reputation, and it's only fair that we made Metro pay for it. So, thank you and have a good trip.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor, just a quick question to put on the record also. Eric, would this be true that you heard over and over and over again that people said that we're probably 4 years late in this process, and they wish that this type of process would have happened 4 years ago?
Yes.
Yeah, it was a good learning lesson, I think, for all of us. So. Yeah,
The phrase that I hear a lot is the best time to plant a tree is 25 years ago. Mm-hmm. The second best time is today.
So, thank you. Gary Walters, and then followed by Rachel Palopoli. Gary here?
Gary's left.
Pardon me?
He's left.
He left, okay. Rachel, followed by Reverend, is it Walton?
Good afternoon, Mayor, City Council. Thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak yet again on this subject. My name is Rachel Palopoli. I am a business owner right on Central Avenue. The light rail will directly affect my business. We have been in South Phoenix for 20 years now. We actually employ people who live and reside in South Phoenix. Valley Metro has done a really great job of pushing your backs up against the wall today. Vote 2 lanes, the FTA money can continue. Vote for 4 lanes and the federal money won't. Shame on Valley Metro for not reaching out to the community before. You only did it now because the City Council told you you had to. Now the responsibility is falling on City Council to keep the federal money alive, to continue Valley Metro's participation in the New Start grant program by staying with the 2-lane proposal. Once again, I am only hearing what Valley Metro has said. I believe City Council should request confirmation from the Federal Transit Administration, verifying all that Scott Smith just stated before City Council makes a motion or a vote. Let's get some written confirmation from the FTA, verifying the timeline, the deadlines, and so on and so forth. I'm here to support the Building a Better Phoenix initiative, an initiative which could, if passed, redirect revenues to finance infrastructure improvements. Signatures are currently being collected. Money is secured to get this initiative back on the ballot. Thank you.
Thank you. Reginald Walton, I think it is, and then followed by Charles Quinn. Is Reverend Walton here? Did he leave? Okay. Charles Quinn, and then Gail Knight. Charles Quinn left. Gail Knight. And then Maria Arredondo, but you didn't mark if you wanted to speak or not. Oh.
I'm Charles Quinn.
Come on up. Sorry,
Hello.
Gail, can you just wait a minute?
Whoop.
She's great. Thank you.
Okay. Are you saying just wait or just
No,
great?
I
Go?
told you first and first
Okay.
because I couldn't find you.
Hi, everybody. Hey, I am not a South Phoenix resident. I'll be right up front with that. Pardon me, I just ran 3 steps a step up the upstairs here. What I do have that's a little different than most is I'm a 30-year resident of Hoover Street, which happens to have a station in North Central. Catch my breath for a second here. And I have 8 or 9 years of experience of light rail outside of my door right now. And it's not been good. None of it's good. Number one, I'm still waiting for an exit pollution study that was supposed to be done when light rail went live in 2009, 2010. Because I can tell you the pollution has quite increased rapidly in my neighborhood. It's brought crime into the neighborhood. It congests the traffic to a point where it's almost impossible at certain hours of the day to get anywhere. Good example, yesterday, 5:38, I jumped in my truck to run to my bank, which is literally 6 blocks away across Central on the light rail. Sat at the light at Thomas Road to make a left-hand turn, and got there at 5:38. Finally left the light at 5:46. So 8 minutes to make a left-hand turn. If you don't think that's not adding up to more and more pollution in my area because of the vehicles idling, you're nuts. The 2-lane plan, we have 4 lanes outside my door. 2 of them on either side, north and south, are given to bus lanes and also to bicycle lanes. If you're thinking in South Phoenix you could do with 2 lanes, 1 north, 1 south, again, it's crazy. Because even if you've got 4 lanes, especially if some of them are carrying bus traffic and bicycle traffic, you're back to 2 and you're congested no matter what you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for your patience, Gail.
Good afternoon, Mayor and members of City Council. Let me start with this. The presentations that were done, I attended one at South Mountain Community Center, and I attended one at Pilgrim Rest. And I felt they were very well presented. There was a lot of concern about not having the opportunity to have an assembly like this where you could hear everyone's pros and cons of the issue rather than walking around to stations to ask questions. However, at the presentation at Pilgrim Rest, there was a lot of comment about the great presentation and how it helped to inform and make the community aware. And if that had been part of it in the beginning, it probably would have helped everyone to understand it better. I didn't view it as long as I had been involved in this, I didn't view any of the presentation as biased, but it depends on what you were wanting to get out of that presentation. In starting with the South Phoenix Village community in 1994, an area of the city of Phoenix that was annexed last, that was part of the county. The residents in that community certainly felt that starting to deal with revitalization was moving them into the mainstream of the city of Phoenix. Infill housing has done a tremendous amount of improvements to that area. And individuals are buying in that area because they realize that at some point there will be great transportation, and they want to be a part of that. Show me a community that has not flourished with light rail, and if you do, I say let's stop it. If not, I ask you all to move forward and vote for 2-lane light rail in South Central. Thank you.
Thank you. Maria Arredondo, are you here? Maria? Okay. Okay. Do you know how to pronounce this? Because I don't. Okay, she's finally stumped. First name is Onesimus. Last name is Straken.
Yeah, he was here last week.
I thought it would be memorable for you.
Well, unfortunately, my memory is too short.
Yeah, I'm one and the same.
It is memorable. We're just going to have to get it correct next time.
Onesimus Strawn, Mayor. I came up for the appointment for District 8 about a month ago.
That's right.
Yep. Thank you for having me again. I'm really happy to see everyone responded the way they did again. This is an important decision to be made. I don't know how we got here because, like some of the previous people said, it's been voted in already. But I'm happy that the city paused long enough to get input and feedback from the 400-plus people, as opposed to the 7,000 votes, I think, that voted it in initially, or however many. What I'd remind the council, you're making a decision for the greater good of Phoenix. You're making a decision for the greater good of South Phoenix, which includes District 7, which includes District 8. And I know for sure District 8 has probably about 197,000 residents, 25% of which are probably the ages of 5 to 19. So as you make that decision, realize you're making the decision for the future of Phoenix as well. Not just now, but for the future. And I'd hate to see what happened with the freeway going behind District 6, stall, but yet we're still faced with it, but hundreds of millions of dollars more to complete that freeway and the thoroughfare. We have the money now, we have the momentum now, the votes have been cast, the decision has been made, so I say move forward with the light rail coming in. And I'd like to see the 2-lane transition for the light rail, and I'll tell you why. Phoenix needs that boost, South Phoenix needs that boost. And if it's gonna beautify that area and help put trees, sidewalks, plants, and then the possibility for future development, I say go for it. I'm all in support.
Thank you.
Any questions, Mayor?
I'll wait till next time I see you. James Farilla and then Don Dassinger. James? Oh, he's running across, okay. And then following Don will be Dr. Anhart.
Mayor, Council, members, I do not live in South Phoenix. I currently reside at 5th Avenue in McDowell, and I have benefited from the light rail as of today. I am in process of, I opened escrow in purchasing a property at 3902 South Central, so this will greatly impact my future business. And I am in support of 2 lanes, so I'm willing to thank you.
Don, I think it's Dassinger? Dr. Hart.
Good afternoon, Mayor Williams and City Council members, and thank you for allowing this opportunity for me to speak before you today. As Martin Luther King said, now is not the time to be silent about things that matter most. And what matters most to me, as a longtime resident of the South Phoenix area for the last 35 years, is for myself and many community members and citizens to have access to the diamond in the desert, which is downtown. Imagine the great opportunities that not only economically will be economically feasible, but educationally and involve civic engagement. It's a great opportunity for our community members and all parts of our community, special needs individuals, children, youth, to be educated along the light rail as a pipeline to opportunities for educational growth, to see the opportunities and resources that exist in our city beyond and below, and being the 6th and swapping also as the 5th place as the fastest growing city in it's one of the fastest growing cities, is Phoenix, Arizona, then it's the time to meet the needs of the 21st century, to evolve along the pathway of what we already decided that we would do. It would be a beautiful experience is to be able to have the beautification that will come along with the 2-track light rail system to come to South Phoenix. I take that path back and forth daily for the last 35 years down South Central. And I look for the opportunity one day to put my car to rest, as well as many of my other friends and relatives and extended family members and community members, to be able to bring a visitor from out of town and not have to take the back roads to get to South Phoenix, because we want to have the opportunities the other cities have in terms of technology and the evolution that comes along with what was proposed by the public transit system and the Transportation Authority. It is a great opportunity for us to grow, and I appreciate your vote on that. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Stephen Miskill, and then Felix Tafoda.
I'm not even sure why we're here. I vote in favor of Prop 104. It's been decided. It's already been approved. That included the extension. So however you configure that is, that's great. But for those who are dead set against any extension of the light rail or the light rail at all, this is for you. I'm disabled. I depend on public transportation to live an independent life. I live near a bus route. It runs once every hour. If I miss that bus, I have to wait in 110-degree weather. The people who complain the most about light rail are the people who've never used it. And it's because of the short-sightedness of Phoenix and the surrounding communities that we're in this situation. This should have been dealt with decades ago, decades. We should have a web of mass transit already set in place, but here we are talking about this. And this is not just a matter of convenience for many and inconvenience for a few. This is a matter of social justice. The people who depend on the light rail are people like me, people elderly, people who can't afford a car, can't afford the maintenance, can't afford the parking. We're the people who depend on this light rail. We don't have the luxury of driving and polluting the air that we all have to breathe. So I don't know how you're going to deal with this, but all I know is you better not
Thank you.
Stop the extension.
Thank you very much. Albert Voss will follow Felix.
Hi, Mayor, council members. On behalf of the citizens of South Phoenix that do not want the light rail, I believe it is fair for us to have an opportunity to educate and inform the entire community of South Phoenix of the effects that this system will have on our community. I respect everything that everyone has said here, but there have been times that votes have been overturned due to new education that may shed light on the effects of a proposition that may have been passed. Many of the proponents are not citizens of the area. We've established that, and only see the project as a means to make money and give jobs, but ironically have voted down this light rail in their areas. I've been able to attend about four of the 6 meetings, the so-called meetings that they had. That was basically us sitting there, watching a few videos and hearing what he had to say about his interactions with his wife and how we should project things. They say we don't want change. He was trying to give us hope for change, and we do want change. We want better sidewalks and nice paved streets. One thing I keep hearing people say is about the landscaping that's going to be provided to us, but when I asked them specifically who was going to be maintaining that, they pointed at the city of Phoenix, and the city of Phoenix was not there. But if you go down Central Avenue, anybody that lives there, if you guys live there, it's never maintained. Plants are overgrown, and we have grass that is overgrown as well, cracked pavements, things like that. So just asking for consideration respectfully for you to perhaps let us get this proposition back on the ballot so that we can make a more well-educated collective decision on this. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, Mayor and Council. Sorry about that. I have decided, and I've been listening to everything on the news and everything about what you people have been doing. Now, if we go spend our financial money that we get from the government to build the 4-way lanes, we're going to have to tear out half of the businesses down there on Central, because I've been down there as a contractor looking at the area. And it's not going to work that way unless we tear out the businesses to make the 4 lanes. So I prefer the rail to go in at any time. And we keep on going with the construction of the rail. Now, if the people out there in South Central want to lose their businesses and housing and parks to build the 4 lanes, well, let them, okay? But they'll be the ones that will regret it afterwards. And thank you, Councilman.
Thank you. Javier Espinoza and then Roy Miller.
Good afternoon, Mayor, Council. My name is Javier Espinoza. I was born and raised in South Phoenix. My mother lives on 2nd Avenue in Rozier, along with my brother, and my aunt lives on Central and Fremont, all public transit dependent. So a lot has been said on what I was going to say, so my thunder has been stolen. But what I will say is I, along with a couple of folks from South Phoenix and a bigger group, have been working with Valley Metro and the City of Phoenix to make sure that with the current plan, that our community is taken into consideration. And some things that we've been able to do that haven't been mentioned is make sure that this project is equitable for the community. When I say that, our group has been able to instill language into the RFQs that were used to select the contractors for this project, so that they were required to engage and hire from the community. That includes the design team, that includes the construction team. So with that, with this project going through, there's a lot of folks that have the ability to further their lives by having the opportunity to go for some of these jobs that will be necessary to help this project get into our community. So I am in support of the 2-lane configuration. I'm very much in support of the progress that the 2-lane configuration and that the light rail can bring to our community. You know, there's been a lot of division brought up as a result of this project and of this configuration debate. So I'm hoping that once this is all done, I pray that our community can bring itself back together for the future and for progress. Thank you.
Following Roy is Greg Brunel.
My name is Roy Miller. I'm on the Citizens Transportation Commission, and I was also on the committee that approved Prop 104. I'd like to comment briefly on why I think we're in this awkward situation today. I would suggest that it's partly because the group of people promoting Prop 104, there was a little bit of dishonesty there. Most of them were there to get money for light rail, but they recognize that light rail is only used by a very small percentage of the population. So in order to get voter support, they threw in lots of other things. They threw in money for bikes, they threw in money for pedestrians, they threw in money for buses, and thankfully even threw in some money to fix the roads. But almost all the residents of Phoenix want the roads to be fixed. And so what happened is everybody went along with Prop 104 in order to get their little piece, even though there was a very small percentage in favor of the light rail. Well, what's happened now is people are realizing congestion is getting worse, traffic is getting worse, the roads aren't getting fixed, and so now people are starting to have second thoughts, and I think that's where we are today. And for that reason, I think we ought to do what the vast majority of the people in the city of Phoenix want, is get the roads fixed. And in order to do that, we need to delay the light rail and shift the money over to getting the roads fixed. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Please.
Madam Mayor, City Council, first thing, it's great to look out there and see that there are more women than guys sitting in the City Council. We have a fire chief that's a woman. We have the head of the police department's a woman. The city manager's just hanging on by his fingernails, waiting to see what's going to happen next. My only reason for pointing that out is not that many years ago, that would be a very radical thought. Okay, that would be a big change. What's happening? Okay. Now, there was a time, and I'm going to try to make this 2 minutes. There was a time the South Side had the most beautiful street, the most beautiful road, okay, in the valley. That was Baseline Road. It was 2 lanes. It was surrounded by citrus. It had flower farms. It was great. People went down from the East Valley, went down there, went up the mountain, came down, and left, and the South Side got nothing for it, okay? Maybe they bought some flowers, or maybe they bought some citrus, okay? We've changed that road, and we did it for real reasons, and it had, really good reasons. We needed to have rooftops. We needed to get development. We made those decisions, and we did it. And when we made those decisions, we knew, in a sense, we were killing Central, because we knew the commercial nodes would draw businesses away from Central. This is all stuff that was discussed at the time, okay? My point for bringing this up is that, okay, now's the time have payback, okay, for South Central. And we've ordered to do that and get $700 million. We got to put a train down the middle of it, okay? And I'm for 2 lanes because that's going to give us a beautiful street, okay? And we need to think of that. We need to think that a street isn't just about lanes. A street is about everything that goes into a street, and that's sidewalks and trees and the multimodal ideas and all that cool stuff. Okay, we need a beautiful street that once again will attract people to come into the South Side.
Thank you.
And have new restaurants and all that good stuff. Thank you.
Thank you. Jenny Holm. And then Shimin Hawes.
My name is Jenny Hom, and I have a business on Central Avenue. In 1978, there was a storm called El Nino. It rained for 19 days in January, and it washed off Salt River Bridge, which is the Rio Salado on Central. So we had a different route, back-to-back traffic. When the river dried up, it was rebuilt. But then again, the bridge was washed off again. So it was built again, so this time it didn't wash out. So if you put the light rail along the bridge with the cars, there would be wear and tear on the bridge. And so on Mill Avenue in Tempe, they didn't put the light rail on the bridge. It was separate from the cars. So Mill Avenue did collapse during those storms. And one point is, at Margaret Hans Park, there's an I-10 tunnel that the park is above the east side, and ADOT owns it. So when they have a festival, they only allow 5 cars to get on the park, and it's supervised by ADOT and the Margaret Hans staff to make sure that not a lot of weight to be on there. So the reason why I know that, because I'm an event coordinator for the second largest festival at Margaret Hans Park. Now, when I hear about the initiative that was passed because of the vote, yeah, but it was, on the initiative was voted, had 3 times. It's been on the ballot 3
Your
times.
time's up. I need you to wrap up, please.
Okay, so it's not the first time.
Thank you. Shimin Hawes. Oh, right there, sorry. And then Chris Hinkson.
Okay. My name is Shemin Hawes. I'm a 3rd-generation native of Maricopa County. One of my first jobs out of college was working for Phoenix Transit. At that time, I lived in a trailer park at 32nd Street and Southern. I used to take the 61 bus to the 0 Central bus to get to work every day. And I was blessed to be able to get free transportation as an employee benefit because we were trying to meet the legally mandated reduction of emissions. Back in the day, you know, we used to have this concern for the well-being of the planet, a concern about things like global warming and climate change, and all of those things are now seemingly being forgotten by the lure of big money from the Koch brothers, who are, you know, are petroleum industry millionaires, and they're the ones that are funding this opposition. South Phoenix voters approved this by 70%, to answer the old white dude's question, who wanted to upgrade the people in South Phoenix rather than upgrading transportation. I'll tell you, they voted it in by 70%. Transit is a no-brainer. You don't have to have been working for the transit system from the time you were in your 20s to know that. It provides cleaner air, fewer cars on the road, an option for people that can't afford cars, improved infrastructure, the list goes on. All of these arguments against the light rail are red herrings. They say the same thing about emergency vehicles being able to get through streets when protesters line the streets. You know, it's all just a red herring to distract from the truth of the matter, which is, we really shouldn't be here right now. We voted this in. The money is being provided by the federal government. We want a 2-lane light rail in South Phoenix. There's no reason why we shouldn't have it, other than the reason that South Phoenix has always been the least served of all areas of this valley. And we know why. It's because that's where the black folk and the Mexican folk live. Back in the day, they couldn't even live north of McDowell Road.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
people that don't agree with this project are climate deniers, bigots, and not.
Thank you. Following him is Shannon McBride.
Hi. Chris Hinks is my partner. He had to leave, so I'm going to speak with him. We're property owners on Central Avenue at Central and Baseline. We own a shopping center there at the corner. I just want to make the point that we're against the 2-lane configuration. I want to make the point that everyone keeps saying we've already voted for this and we shouldn't be here. Well, everyone voted for a 4-lane configuration. There's nowhere else in Phoenix that has a 2-lane configuration. The assumption underneath that vote of voting for light rail is that it would be a 4-lane configuration. This is an inferior design. In a little over 2 months, over 5,000 signatures were gathered against this design and against this 2-lane configuration by 4 lanes or no train. And because of this poor design, I feel if council moves forward with the 2-lane configuration, the signature gathering will continue. Put this back to vote against the 2-lane configuration, all because we've gotten to this point where the 2-lane configuration should have never been allowed. The only people that are for it are desperate for light rail. It should have been 4 lanes from the start, and we shouldn't be in this position at all.
Thank you.
Thanks.
George Master will follow.
Hi, I'm Shannon McBride. Hi, Council, Mayor. I just wanted to come share my excitement about the light rail and also my experience. I'm a Phoenician, 58-year-old Phoenician that currently lives near 19th Avenue Northern, where the light rail just went in, Northwest Extension. And I just wanted to share my experience. I too was, in the beginning, I really didn't even know what a light rail was, like nothing, and was concerned. I was a pastor at one of the churches that was right on 19th Avenue, and we talked a lot about the fear of what was going to happen to our church, how the noise would affect us, and what we found out instead is that the light rail coming in created economic and community development that continues and is growing in our community. It's the truth. What I found is, I now have relationship with the people in Valley Metro and with the City of Phoenix because we worked together to make 19 North an amazing community, and it's still becoming more and more amazing. We've got public art where we didn't have before. We've got trees where we didn't have before, sidewalks. Developers call me and talk about, we've got apartment complexes that were dilapidated. One apartment's getting $4.6 million, another one's $6.7 million, another one just got bought, is going to have $12 million. These are dilapidated apartment complexes that are getting renovated and becoming more beautiful that all of us can enjoy. So we've got developers looking at the area of investing and building new buildings, exciting things happening all the time. And it all happened because the light rail came in, community got together, relationships started happening, we worked together, we collaborated across functions of city and government and state and churches and started doing something amazing together. And I'm so thrilled that the light rail is going to continue because it just connects us all as one big city, and that's what we are as one community. Thank you.
Thank you. Following George will be Lyle Polcher.
Hello, my name is George Master. I actually do not live in the South Phoenix area. However, I do work in those areas of our town every day, actually. And I have friends that own businesses along the light rail routes in Mesa. And all I hear is how a lot of the businesses that have been operating out of there were literally forced out of business because the light rail created a situation to where they couldn't operate because people didn't want to drive down that way. Not to mention the amount of traffic that has increased in terms of gridlock because the light rail and the traffic pretty much have to yield to each other regardless of how much they say the light rail gets the right of way. The other thing I want to mention is safety. We claim that this is going to be another form of safe transportation for everybody, yet I got a lot of female friends who go to Arizona State University and try to get on that, and you have people who are either transients or homeless or for whatever reason they're taking the rail for free, just to mention, that are creating all sorts of problems for some of these individuals that make it unsafe for them to ride on these rail lines. Now, as far as the neighborhoods are concerned in the South Phoenix area, You put that light rail up, you're going to have all sorts of people who are going to look for other avenues to get around that light rail, which is going to include traveling at high rates of speed through those neighborhoods, the likes of which the city of Phoenix can't even afford the policing system to ensure that that's not happening in those neighborhoods. You got kids traveling, walking back and forth at all hours of the day. It's just, we can't have this. And lastly, I just want to say, you know, I've been hearing a lot of this. A lot of people down there don't have cars. Yet every time I'm in those neighborhoods working, I see plenty of homes that have cars parked outside. The jobs are not all along Central Avenue and in Central Phoenix. Most of those people work along the I-10 and many manufacturing facilities and distribution centers. They're not all there. I think this is a big mistake. It's going to have a negative impact on the economy down there. What we need is rail lines that are not on surface streets, but something that cater to a majority of the residents of this valley. Thank you very much.
Following Lyle is Joseph Larrys. Lyle Plocher.
I was looking for my last name. Good afternoon, Mayor and members of the City Council. My name is Lyle Plocher, and I live just south of downtown. It's a real shame, I think, that we weren't able to see the video today in this chamber that many people saw in the 6 community meetings. If I remember, the purpose of this whole 90-day period that we've had was to go out to the community and inform the community more, let them see the difference between the 2-lane and the 4-lane. I actually attended 2 of the meetings myself, and I thought Eric, the gentleman that did the presentation, did an excellent job of kind of diffusing all of the emotion and just letting people ask their questions. They went to the different boards around the room. They had a chance to, you know, address their concerns. But he did an excellent job of just calming things down and letting Valley Metro show the difference between the 2-lane and the 4-lane. So I thought it was an excellent job. And from my understanding, the purpose of this period was just to give these people an opportunity to see more. It wasn't to decide whether to kill the project or not. I'm not an attorney. I'm totally with Mr. Elam and the others that have said, you know, I don't know if the City Council has the power to overturn the vote of the city or not, but we're not here to discuss the pros and cons. We're here to, people got a chance to see the wisdom, and I think the videos clearly showed the benefit of the 2-lane configuration. These guys are experts, the engineers, they did all their research, so I encourage the City Council to move forward, vote for the 2-lane configuration. Thank you.
Thank you. Joseph, then followed by Savita Rementrol.
I have information for the council, if I can give it. Thank you. My name is Joseph Larios. I was born and raised in South Phoenix. I go back 4 generations. And I want to draw light to Bailey Consultants' addendum, which was out of the scope of work, which names major concerns about displacement, and that his suggestion was that I think the imperative of the city is to, at the very least, be a part of these conversations, at the most organizing and facilitating these conversations about displacement. I offer that up because I would like to point to our own Ladder Step program. At the top, it says one of our significant accomplishments is an environmental assessment report that was done in year 3. As I look at that, Valley Metro has its own appendix to that process that lays out exactly how we're supposed to look at the issue of displacement, citing avoid, minimize, or mitigate disproportionately higher adverse human health or environment effects, including social and economic effects on minority and low-income populations, ensure the full and fair participation of those folks who are most directly impacted. It also states that you should identify and evaluate the environment through public health and interrelated social and economic effects of what the impact will be. I look at that as the opportunity to have made visible the harm of displacement to this community that was never addressed. And when you look at what was actually reported, which is on the backside of this, and you look at the categories in the Environment Assessment Report that speaks to this whole appendix of environmental justice, of community impact, of economic impact, it lists each of those as no adverse impact. For environmental justice under impact, no disproportionately high or adverse impact on low income or minority populations would occur. That makes no sense considering the substantial wealth of data about the South Central area, the South Central corridor, that intersects, that when we have one of the lowest opportunities to be healthy, we have one of the highest incarceration rates, we have the highest concentration of food deserts, and we have the lowest life.
Thank you. None of this has been addressed. How are we supposed to have faith in this? Councilman?
Mayor, Joe, can you hold off for just a second? Stay up there. I have a question. So what hasn't been addressed that should have been addressed?
Thank you. I look at these data points that clearly talk about South Phoenix as the historically segregated part of town. These are readily accessible by Phoenix, by Maricopa County's Health Improvement Partnership, by the Office of Environmental Programs. None of these data points are ever talked about, were ever mentioned in any of the processes. I would like to point out that this was brought up as a glaring...
He's answering a question.
I'm asking him a question.
And so the reason why I say this wasn't addressed is because back in 2016, when the environmental impact report was placed and put out to the public, this was brought up to Sonia Pastor of Valley Metro. This was brought up to Scott Miller, who is director of the planning process of the South Central Extension, that this is an omission. It was brought up to Mario Piangia, the deputy director of transportation. It was brought up to Albert Santana.
Thank you, Joe. Let me ask a question from Scott. Were these brought up, and did you address any of these issues or concerns?
Mayor, Councilman Nowakowski, I don't have the report right in front of me. They are obviously part of the environmental process. I was not involved at the time.
My report. Here you go.
Well, I don't have the whole report in front of me, but I think stating what Mr. Ladio said, if it was brought up and there was considered to be no impact at the time, I don't know exactly what the discussion was at the time, but there was the determination that there would not be a significant adverse impact because, you know, when you're looking at environmental impact, you look both at the positive benefits and the negative benefits and see how construction of something such as light rail will change the community. There are positive impacts. We've heard from those today. Part of the displacement is mitigated by the fact that light rail opens up the community and allows people to come in and go out. And the fact of the matter is that you've instead of creating segregation, in many ways you create more opportunities for communities to mix. That's called connectivity. That's why we build these things. That's why we build transportation systems. But I don't know, I can't tell you exactly what was done on that particular thing, even from reading the report, because I believe the report probably has a conclusion and maybe a summary of what was done. I will say this. This is obviously an ongoing discussion. I think everyone is concerned about how any type of transportation impacts a community. This is something Mr. Latios has brought up, others had brought up, as things such as gentrification. I will say this, the City of Phoenix received a significant grant from the federal government, which we call the TOD grant, and basically it's to talk about transit-oriented development and the impact on the community. That won't solve everything, but we like to look at it this way. We build the train down the street, and in the middle of the street, that has an impact. From the edge of the curve on, the community decides what the community is going to be, and there's a lot of tools available to ensure that there's inclusion through zoning, through neighborhood assistance, through discussion with the community as to how you can shape the positive impact that building that light rail will have. That's a discussion that is started. It certainly hasn't been completed, and it is one that won't really be impacted until light rail is actually in there in 2023. But now's the time to actually start having that serious discussion. We don't know the answers, but we do know how we can proceed with that, and we are participating in that discussion.
Thank you. Thank you, sir. Savita Janagary, I'm guessing on that last name. And then the next two speakers say they're in the lower chambers, Larry Cohen and George Vasquez. Is Savita here? I'll spell the last name because I probably full mispronounce it. Chandragiri, I think. Okay. Hearing none. Jack Hamlet. No Jack. How about Redeem Robinson? And Larry Cohen, and I hope George Vasquez is coming up from downstairs. We have one card left. 4. Yeah.
Good afternoon, Mayor Williams and members of the City Council. I just want to share a few things. One, I ride the light rail almost every day. I take public transportation almost every day. And I've actually used to live in South Phoenix when I first moved here a little over 2 years ago. South Phoenix was where I first came to. It takes almost over an hour to get from certain parts from South Phoenix to downtown and the rest of Phoenix on the bus. It's not a pleasant ride. And of course we know that the light rail is the fastest mode of transportation in our city. And this is why I'm in favor of not only the two-way lanes, but we need to expand light rail into South Phoenix. One, we can't afford to leave the people of South Phoenix behind. That community has been left behind for too many years, and we cannot continue to leave that community behind. Let's think about the young kids in that community who want access to public transportation, easy access to go to the baseball game. Let's talk about the person who needs to get to their job, the single mother who's working and needs to get to a job easier, and they can take an easier way by the light rail. These are things that we need to think about. Also, let's also talk about how some of us in the rest of part of Phoenix want to get to South Phoenix. South Phoenix is a great place, and we should have access to South Phoenix as well. So please, let's move forward with the light rail plans into South Phoenix, and let's move forward with a two-lane highway, two-lane road into South Phoenix.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Larry Cohen. Are you Larry?
George?
Pardon me? Oh, Larry's left, George is next. I just giving you a little exercise, going back.
Good evening. I'd like to thank the City Council and all the members for the opportunity to share our thoughts openly. It's been interesting hearing both sides, and I really respect both sides of it. The issues are very interesting, and I think they're all valid on both ends. I definitely in opposition of the rail. Got a business on Central, 7202 South Central, Pancho's Mexican Food. Been 46 years, and when I think through this process, and I'm thinking, will it impact us? Yep, absolutely. 2 lanes? Absolutely. 4 lanes? Horribly. Will we make it? I don't know. Will we be a condominium in a few years from now? I don't know. Will the other members make it? Possibly. But we do know one thing, even if it happens, your business is never the same. It's proven, it's validated, whatever it was going in, forget about ever getting there again. But I would like to say is, what brings me to the thing of this vote on the, in 15, 14%, even if it's 7,000, 14%, and how many of those really know anything about South Phoenix. They need infrastructure, and they're probably there saying, well, I'm on Camelback or McDowell. We need roads and streets cleaned up and all. You know what? How much of that bill did they know was light rail? Oh, maybe South Phoenix, maybe they need light rail. They need something down there. Poor South Phoenix. No, not poor South Phoenix. Don't need a light rail, but give me the infrastructure. Instead of you having to get in your bus, in your car, to go uptown and watch a ball game or go to the school, you know what? It's ridiculous down there. The infrastructure, the $2 million or $2.5 million or $3 million, whatever you want to call it, send it down there. Roads, crosswalks, lights, vegetation, landscaping, anything you can do. Why do you got to go north? Why can't they come south and not a big piece of steel? I don't need it. I love my community. It's been good to a lot of us, no doubt about it. I brag about it. I wouldn't trade it for nothing in the world. But I do not have to have a big piece of steel to have an awesome community. Make it nice, okay? But here's the thing, 2034.
You're out of time. Thank you. When I began this, I said we would go for 2 hours. I think there was the lady down here that I called her name. Do you want to come speak? And then I have one purple card left, and I will do one blue one, and then I'm going to end, and we will submit the rest of the names into the record showing support. Please.
Hello, Mayor and Councilman. I'm Savita Chandragiri, and I'm here to support the 2-lane light rail. And I really don't have to say much more than what has already been said, but just a little bit more is that I'm all for the connectivity that was mentioned between South Phoenix and downtown. It's going to be a great improvement for what is already there, and I support the 2-lane highway. I would love to have seen the 4-lane, but hopefully once we get the 2-lane, and you all vote for it today, I hope, and we can consider a 4-lane alternative or an addendum to the 2-lane as a phased construction in future, and that could be done later as an improvement to the 2-lane highway. Maybe that's a consideration that should be thought about. Also, I think one benefit to me is that a lot of people go to South Mountain Park, which is the most visited park in all of the whole state, the highest visited park. So this is going to help a lot of people travel to the park. That's all, and I support the 2-lane.
Thank you very much. The next card is Susan Godino. Susan Godino, I probably messed up your last name, sorry.
Good afternoon, Mayor and Councilwomen and Councilmen. I had what I wanted to say, but then I was taking notes with what people were saying, and I wanted to try and address all of that. So I'm not going to make eye contact with you just because I'm timed. I want to get everything that I wanted to say out, and also the notes that I took to make points to what people have said before. So 2- and 4-lane designs aren't great or even close to being good, or even close to being considered good. Light rail brings crime and homelessness. People for light rail say kids and people will use the light rail to go to school and work. Heads up, they're already going to school by current public transit. Downtown is only 4 miles away. They're saying it's going to get us, light rail is going to get us to downtown. We can get there already. We have buses that do it already. They forget Phoenix, Maricopa County has a great transportation grid. It's north to south, east to west. It's not California, it's not Seattle, where the roads are curving, they're going in circles, they're going in all different directions, where our streets are northwest and southeast or anything. It's all roads, avenues, drives, north to south, east to west. All right. Okay, next thing, it's public health, it's a health and safety issue. You have to remember, some of the neighborhoods with the 2-lane or 4-lane design, neighborhoods are not gonna have emergency services. For the real estate agents, when some people have to leave their homes, they're not going to be able to sell those homes because emergency services are not going to be provided to those homes. They're not going to be provided to those neighbors now once the construction starts to save those lives. And whose fault is that going to be? Light rail is saying fire engines can jump curbs when they make a U-turn to get and drive on the sidewalk to get to those neighborhoods, and what, mess up, ruin their car. This is going to cost maintenance for those trucks, for those axles. I know because I used to be a truck driver, so I know all about the maintenance of big trucks. And so they're not looking at that. Light rail's not going to give the firemen any money to maintenance their vehicles. Businesses won't last through construction. Some residents will have to look for another place to live. Relocating a business or your home isn't as easy as said. Think about that.
Thank you.
Oh my God.
Phil Pengrazi was the next card, but he left, and he left this for the record. Our last speaker is Tamala Daniels.
St. Mary's in the house.
Save the best for last, right? Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councilman. First, I want to say I was born and raised in South Phoenix, 51 years. Yes, I'm 51. I caught the Tico down Central from Pancho's off of Fremont, because I always got my cheese, crisp, and other Mexican food that I love. And caught the Tico down to St. Mary's. So I'm a Knight. Also went to St. Catherine's, so I was born and raised. My mother owned a business on South Central, the South Central Green Room. They told us back then that cruising on Central brought nothing but crime. I don't remember that. We had a great time. But I do want to say this. Light rail is part of civil rights for transportation. Redlining is also a civil rights violation. South Phoenix is the only place that African Americans and minorities were allowed to buy home and land to build wealth. Once again, we as a people voted for this tax. We're paying the tax, and you're going to take our dollars because you're not going to give the tax back. We have voted for this. The people have a right to speak for their voice. And I remember the gentleman, the last time I spoke, I believe you're from District 4. This gentleman right here with the Wary, District 2. District 2 proudly said that his district don't get any money, so he don't know why. He don't want us to take it anyway. Councilman South from Ahwatukee clearly said he spoke for the votes of South Phoenix people, but he don't give us no water for our landscaping. He don't speak a voice when we talk about better education, because Ahwatukee always brings their buses and continue to move the people and the students back to Ahwatukee. So that means we lose 200 students per year at $700,000 for our schools. That's a civil rights violation. Today, we say, as a people, we want the light rail. We voted for it, and unfortunately, a small number didn't. And unfortunately, that is how it works in this system. It's a Democratic Party. We want the light rail.
Thank
2
you very
lanes,
much.
I'm with it.
Please, I have 20 cards for 2 lanes left, and I'm going to put the names in the record so that it is shown that you did file your support in the future. I'm now going to call for a motion. Councilwoman Stark.
Thank you, and thank you so much. Thanks for everyone's participation. I actually had an opportunity to go down to Mesa and see how 1 lane works, going in either direction. I had the opportunity to go to 2 of the meetings that Valley Metro hosted, and I also attended a meeting with Councilwoman Mendoza and Councilman Nowakowski. We actually had a hearing and listened to people talk on both sides about it. So based on the community's overall input throughout this extensive outreach process, I move that this council reaffirm the existing plans and road configuration for 1 through lane in each direction for South Central Light Rail Extension, and that we continue moving forward with the federal funding submittal process. But I would like to have a little direction for staff. First, I want to make sure staff ensures that we have a fully community inclusive and equitable transit-oriented development process focused heavily on addressing gentrification and small business needs. I hope that any request to rezone land will not result in negative community impacts. Any process for use of city-owned property in the area involve the community. The city take an education, not enforcement-based approach to addressing any neighborhood violations during the construction. That there's a strong effort to encourage and promote affordable housing, and the city must involve the community in ensuring job opportunities are provided for residents and youth. That's my motion.
I'd like to second that motion.
Please, do I have a second?
I'd like to second.
Okay.
I'd like to second that motion, but I want to clarify some points in your motion.
Okay.
On your first point, I'd like to clarify that this would mean that the South Central TOD Steering Committee develops policies addressing gentrification and small business needs, and they solicit significant input from residents, businesses, and property owners to identify areas for preservation, retrofit, and redevelopment, so the community helps decide what areas change or remain the same. On your second point, rezoning requests must address impacts to existing residents and small businesses to minimize gentrification of neighborhoods and loss of small locally owned businesses. They must also serve to preserve historic or cultural assets or open space. Third, when it comes to used city-owned property, local neighborhood and small businesses representatives must be involved in any RFP process. On your fourth point, we need to be clear that the Neighborhood Services Department, with the existing businesses and residents, to focus on education over enforcement and addressing any blight or neighborhood violations. Also, NSZ should assist small businesses through the neighborhood commercial rehabilitation and operation patch and paint programs. You mentioned the need to address affordable housing. Staff must engage affordable housing developers to help discuss and address this corridor's needs and opportunities. Market for housing to ensure they are working to address housing shortages. The last item you mentioned related to jobs for the community. Specifically, Community Economic Development Department should partner with nonprofit vocational and educational training organizations to improve those opportunities for youth and residents.
Thank you. Councilman Nowakowski?
Mayor, first of all, I just want to make it very clear, we're here to vote on 2 lanes or 4 lanes. We never had the intention of ending light rail. I don't know how that got out there, how it got interwound with the meetings that we had, but we're here making sure that people had their opinions on 4 lanes versus 2 lanes. Second, I'd like to thank our mayor, Thelda Williams, for the opportunity of giving us these 90 days, really to allow the community of South Phoenix to come together and talk about the concerns of having 2 lanes or 4 lanes. Out of that conversation, a lot of things came out. We found out that South Phoenix doesn't have their fair share when it comes to streets, sidewalks, opportunities for our youth, all kinds of things out there. We want to make sure that our community is taken care of, that it's not just about a light rail. We need a lot more than just a light rail. The other thing is that we don't want this light rail to end up being the same situation we have at the airport, losing 4 communities because of an extension of the airport. Now, if you drive by 16th Street and Buckeye, it's empty fields that used to be communities, that used to be neighborhoods that some of us lived in and enjoyed. We want to make sure that we don't make the same mistake with the Rio Salado project. People continually ask me, why don't we have a lake? Now you're talking about a river, canals like San Antonio and all that. Why didn't we do that at the very beginning? Why didn't we have green space for our kids to have picnics and enjoy and bring families together? We don't want to end up having the same mistakes as we did in the past and trying to fix them at the very end. We need to make sure that there's a process that the community is heard, that we work along with everyone. I believe a process takes 3 things: people, people, and people. And if the people aren't involved and they don't have a vested interest in this project's not going to work, folks. We need to make sure that the people that live in that community are involved. We need to make sure that people that work in that community are involved, and we need to make sure that people that own businesses in that community are involved with this process, not just a handful of individuals. It was sad when we got the report that back in 2012, June 5th, we had 13 people attend a meeting discussing the light rail. Back in 2012, June 7th, there was only 18 people that attended these types of meetings. Over and over and over again, we heard, we wish we would have had a process like this 4 years ago. We wish we would have had more input. We wish you would have brought all the community together, from the spiritual community, from our churches, our places of worship, to our businesses, to our youth centers, to our senior centers, to everyone coming together to discuss what their wants and what their needs are for our community. So I want to make sure that if we're going to be hiring individuals, that we hire individuals from South Phoenix that live along that light rail and that are going to be affected, that we should be having quality jobs for those individuals, first of all. The other thing is the quality of life. We have a lot of poor individuals that live along Central Avenue. There's mobile parks that are out there. And what I'm afraid of is that I hear stories from these individuals saying that I bought this trailer for $8,000, $10,000. It's my whole life savings in this trailer. They rent the property they rent this little spot for $150 to $175 a month. What happens if the owner decides to sell that property to build some apartments there? We need to make sure that we don't displace these individuals that have been living there for years and years, that we have some type of program that we can help them out. We need to make sure that also that if there's some possibility that these individuals that have businesses out there, that they feel that they're going to be displaced, is there an opportunity to relocate their business? Do we have properties that we can actually trade? I'm not sure if that's possible or not, but I'd like to see if there's city-owned property somewhere else where these businesses say, well, I'd like to relocate in that area to continue my family business, right? The other thing is that we just continue this process, making sure that people are heard. And once again, the process has to be people, people, and people. And that's why I will agree to vote on these 2 lanes. I'm really a supporter of 4 lanes, but because of losing the federal funds and because I've been hearing over and over again that we would lose this federal funds, and with no type of information, no documentation, I'm going to take the word from you all that if we go with 4 lanes and go outside that footprint of 2 lanes, that we would lose that funding. So that's why I'll be supporting this at this moment.
Thank you. Vice Mayor?
Thank you, Mayor.
Please.
So it will come as a surprise to no one here. I hate the light rail. I think it's a ridiculous waste of resources at a time where we don't, as a country, I'm not just talking about the city, we don't have resources to waste. It doesn't move very many people. It certainly doesn't move even close to as many people as our streets. Not even close. To the gentleman, I think it was just one maybe, who pointed out that our streets are crumbling. He's not wrong. But I'll leave that aside for a second. So I was anxious to see what would happen with the 4-lane configuration, because maybe this didn't start out as a vote to do away with light rail, but that's really what it would have turned out to be, because the 4-lane configuration, I think the 1 in a million shot that was going to pass tells the tale. That was probably going to kill it. I like that. I'm a transparent politician. I think we should kill it. I think this is a disastrous mistake, and we'll be paying a penalty for this for decades to come. Look at the crime statistics on 19th Avenue. Go ahead and look. Some of you hooted and hollered when that was suggested by a couple of the speakers. Go look at the actual statistics. Don't believe me? Google ABC. They did a big story about it. I know. I gave them the statistics. So you might want to ponder that. For those of you who feel it's appropriate to shout out from the audience and stuff, please just remind yourselves that I sat here and listened patiently for hours. Some of you I've seen yell and scream at meetings before. It's a public meeting. These folks have a right to speak too, as do I. You want to get yourself elected, you can have more time at the microphone. I think that's unlikely in some of your cases, but we'll see. So please just be respectful. That's all I'm really asking. But for the person who was talking about, maybe I don't care about light rail because the district I represent doesn't get $1. Okay, let's talk about that for a second. Do you blame me? It's $8 billion roughly in a $31 billion 35-year plan. I think there's about $1 billion for street repair. My district relies on streets. It's the only district that gets no dollars of light rail. Not that we want it, but we might want our fair share of the $31 billion. Is that so unreasonable? Do I sound like really that big of a jerk when I say it like that? I also feel like I'm representing...
Hey, please.
Fair enough.
Knock it off.
Hey, not the first time somebody's despised me. Won't be the last. I will say this for the people... I'm very self-aware, if nothing else. For the people who spoke, Ponchos, for example, and some of the other business, Recycle Planet is another that I've met with and so forth. Small business owners in my family. So I understand that you sweat blood to make those restaurants and other businesses successful. I feel your pain. Will this hurt you? Absolutely. I drove down Central. Well, I don't really anymore, but I used to drive down Central pre-light rail on my way home from work. 19th Avenue, I had the dubious honor of going over there during the light rail construction, and I can tell you, you will alter your behavior if you're subjected to that kind of traffic flow. Do I think people will not go to businesses because of this construction? Absolutely. Will people alter their behavior and not go to businesses after it's completed? Absolutely. So we may argue that, well, you know what, that's just the brakes. It's just the way it is. Okay, easy for you to say if you don't have a business there. But for me, I do appreciate the folks who came and spoke today, and I understand how much you put into your businesses. One, I think, was 46 years. Some of them were 20 years. I guess for those who were booing those people, you again might want to pause and reflect. We talk a lot about decorum and so forth, but it doesn't seem to get exhibited all the time. You might just want to think and put yourself in the other person's shoes. I try to do it, not saying I do it all the time or that I'm perfect, but you were sort of hooting and hollering at a guy whose district gets nothing but pays every bit as much in taxes to pay for the project that apparently you think is going to benefit you, and you wonder why I might be against it? I don't know. If I defend, maybe I'll be the one person today defending the folks who have businesses. They have a lot of skin in this game. This could really hurt them. I don't know. Shouldn't somebody speak for them? It doesn't seem that unreasonable. So I support the initiative that people are putting together. I think having a healthy discussion is something we should do. But I appreciate the fact that you guys participated in this. I voted against the original motion, nothing against the maker of the motion. I know it was well-intentioned. Myself and Councilwoman Gallego, I think for probably, my guess, different reasons, voted against the motion to put this process into place because we wound up right back where we started, which didn't surprise me at all. So here we are again. We're going to go forward with the same project. I thought there was a 0% chance that it would change. I thought there was a 0% chance that it was going to be 4 lanes. And I knew there was a 0% chance we were just going to do away with light rail. Am I surprised we're here today? No. But I will be voting no, as is my right. So I appreciate the time, Mayor, very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman Pastor.
Thank you, Mayor, for acknowledging me and allowing me to speak. Here are some of my takeaways in this whole process. There were a lot of people all over the city that voted for light rail, including South Phoenix. And so in this process, and my intent, or I believe also the intent of Councilman Nowakowski, was to determine if it was a 2 or 4 lane. And really, ultimately, I felt that we had the community coming in front of us saying, you're not hearing us and we want to be heard, and we weren't part of the process. When I voted on this in 2014, I believe it was 2014, I voted on this when I first got elected, and at the time, it was 2 lanes. And at the time, nobody was sitting in front of us saying we don't want 2 lanes. And as we moved through the process, little by little, more people were coming and saying, we want 4 lanes, we weren't aware of this. And so in this whole journey, Councilman Nowakowski and I felt there needs to be a 90-day hold and to hear the constituents of South Phoenix. In that, and Councilman Waring, you may be right, it might not change the decision, it may not, we're back to the same space or where we're at today. However, what it did do is through this addendum, it did highlight many things and many concerns of the South Phoenix community. And in this addendum, it also put a light, I believe, to our city staff to look at these items as we move towards the future. And I anticipate that those that represent that area will continue the dialogues that are being asked. As Eric Bailey stated very clearly, that he feels that conversations still need to continue in this district or in this in South Phoenix area, because in having conversations, we can restore the dignity to the topics and to the citizens that care about them, and really restore trust within the city and the community, which is very important to all of us as we move forward and as we move forward in growing in the city of Phoenix. Now, there are many people that have been working on this for over, I want to say 15 years, 20 to 15 years. And Pastor Barnwell, George Young, Vernon McLean, they were kind of the pioneers of South Phoenix at that time and really pushing for connectivity. And so I believe that we are at the space where we need connectivity and we need to modernize and we need to connect South Phoenix to everybody else. The other piece that's on the table is not just South Central. So I know people have been talking and made this all about South Central, but it's not just about South Central. It's about Metro Center and moving Metro Center forward. It's about West Capitol and the line to West Capitol. So it ends up being 3 projects that are going to be impacted by this vote. So either way, these projects get impacted because they're part of this whole package. So people are talking about South Center, it's bigger than that. In addition to that, we will be voting in October about the future of light rail and everything else. And so I'm hoping that those that are sitting at right now will be here on October, I believe, 6th, where we'll be voting to figure out if we're gonna have future light rail projects move forward. So I hope the same enthusiasm that is happening today will be October 3rd. So emergency vehicles. Can somebody answer that question? Because there was 2 statements. Emergency vehicles and what can the train do that the bus can't? So I would like those questions answered for the public.
Mayor, Councilwoman Pastor, on the emergency vehicles, just want to make it clear the 2-lane configuration was developed with the guidance and the concurrence of the fire department. The width of that design allows for the safe passage of all emergency vehicles. Cars there is enough space for the cars to pull to the side of the road and emergency vehicles to pass through in that design. I don't know if there's anything further you would add, Mr. Smith.
No, just the width difference between the 4-lane configurations we looked at and the 2-lane is only 2 feet. It's just that you couldn't fit. It's the intersections where you have the problems. The fact of the matter is, in the 2-lane, one of the surprises, we actually found out that it's more amenable. It's safer for emergency vehicles. They travel more easily with the 2-lane than they do with the 4-lane. The other thing is that this isn't that dissimilar from a from a road that has medians in it. We have, one of the challenges we had is we have a light every less than quarter of a mile with an intersection where emergency vehicles and all vehicles can make U-turns, left turns, and that eases the transition for emergency vehicles. It was designed with that in mind, that no part will be that far away, and there will be more readily available access with the 2-lane.
And then my question was something, what can the train do that the bus can't?
Well, there's several things a train can do that a bus can't. First of all, a train will be operating every 12 minutes, whereas buses go on that route from every 20 minutes to 30 minutes. It's been expanded since T2050, but you'll have much more frequent service along that corridor. The second thing is, it is a fixed route. Now, there are those who will argue that that is one of the worst things about a train, and what we found is that it's one of the best things about a train, depending upon how you feel about it. Because of the investment and the fact that it is a fixed route, it has a tendency to create those patterns. And Councilmember Waring is right, it does create patterns. It also serves as a magnet for investment. People don't build and don't invest in business and other things when the bus route can change. They do, like they do with a freeway or a new road, when it is fixed. And you can just transport more people. A train will carry a couple hundred people. A bus will carry 40 to 50. And so more frequency, more direct connection, faster because the train will have prioritization, and can do more people. One thing that isn't mentioned is actually trains are more efficient. It costs less on a per revenue mile basis to transport people on trains than it does on bus. The upfront cost, no comparison. There's no doubt trains cost a lot more. But as far as operatings go on a per revenue mile, because of the ability to carry more people, longer distances, trains actually are lower per cost per passenger than buses are. And trains last 30 years as opposed to 8 to 12 years.
Thank you. And my final thoughts are, we talked about regentification, we talked about workforce housing, we talked about workforce and being able to connect the workforce, not only on Central, but to other parts of our city. I'm hoping with these stipulations and what was placed in this motion that, as you know, I do a lot of research and I do study patterns and I look at stuff. And so for those property owners or those investors like Alpha Investment Holdings, 24 Broadway, Lendon Properties, and CPLC, who have been purchasing up properties within the corridor on Central, I am hoping that they are conscientious partners and investors that will adhere to what the community and the public would like and want in the sense of affordability, of culture, of office space, where there's co-working happening, of really creating the vibrant South Phoenix that all of us have wanted and dreamed for. But it's not, for me, it's not about 2 lanes or 4 lanes. It's really about the vibrancy of South Phoenix and moving it to the next level. And what does that look like? So thank you for listening to me. Appreciate the respect that you have given me, and I will be voting for 2 lanes.
Councilwoman?
Thank you, Mayor. And just some observations I've noted in having attended the community meetings in Southmount Community Center, and in hearing the dialogue around city services, public transportation. It's important for me to note that it's become very clear to me that there are 2 competing visions for our city and for city government that are at stake, not only in today's vote, but in future votes to come, specifically at the one that will take place October 3rd. One vision of city government is simply reactive. You know, you report a pothole, someone goes out and fixes it. You know, you take out your trash, someone picks up your trash. You report a cracked sidewalk, someone comes out and fixes the sidewalk. And just to be clear, I think we can agree those are all basic functions of city government. But there's also another vision that exists, city government that is proactive, a city government that doesn't just maintain the traditional means of transportation, but that also plans for the future and finds new ways to connect residents to businesses, to education, to each other. A city government that just doesn't pick up the trash, but finds ways and actually makes it so that our communities are more sustainable. A city government that doesn't just send police officers, but looks ahead to make investments in neighborhoods and communities so that everybody feels safe. I don't believe that this is a city where we can have either a world-class transit system or good roads. These things aren't mutually exclusive. In fact, they're not exclusive at all. They're two pieces of a larger puzzle, and we need both if we're going to have a city that continues to innovate and attract a world-class and creative workforce. Last week, my office met with South Phoenix residents and business owners who have been working on the light rail extension for several years, working with Valley Metro and discussing everything from shade strategy to bike share hubs. One of these residents said, "I feel like my fingerprints and my community's fingerprints are all over this project." That's how we build the city of the future. We deeply engage our residents at every step of the process and put their vision into action. I'm going to be supporting the South Central Light Rail extension with the 2 lanes, and I hope my colleagues will as well. Thank you.
Thank you. Please, Councilman DeCiccio, did you want to make a statement?
Yes, Mayor, and I'm going to keep it very simple, and thank you for giving me the time, and thank you to the public that was able to go through this entire meeting. I really appreciate it. It's something I think that should have occurred a long time ago. But for those of you that have this trust and this belief that the politicians are going to protect you here at City Hall, they're not. You're all about to get screwed. The South Phoenix business owners are about to get screwed. You're going to lose your businesses. The construction is going to hurt you. If you think a city that cannot even fix a pothole, cannot even fix a street light, a bulb in a street light, or even be able to fix the basic necessities is going to be able to protect you, they're not. I've never been a supporter of light rail, but this goes beyond just the light rail part of it alone. If you go north where all the wealth is, where all the money is, where the population is that has some say in government, you see nice 4 lanes there. As you go south, the City of Phoenix is designed through Valley Metro 2 lanes. So you're getting half of it right off the bat. If you believe in social justice and believe that at the very least that you ought to be getting your fair share, you're not. You're not getting even the closest amount of your fair share. The light rail itself costs about $151 million per mile just in capital expense, $3 million per mile just for operational per year. Those monies can be better spent putting a real investment in the community. So again, if a city cannot even fix a pothole, fix a street sign, or even change a bulb in a street light, what makes you think that we're going to protect you? The City of Phoenix is not going to protect you. It's not going to protect you, your businesses, and you're going to end up regretting this. And I'm sorry that that's going to happen. There are many people that have seen this. They know what's going to happen out there. People have put in their time, their energy, their investment into a business, to try to grow it for their families, try to live the American dream, and the government is about to take it away from you. So I'm obviously a no on this.
Please.
I've never been a supporter of light rail, but at the very end of the day, you're all about to get screwed. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. I want to say thank you to all the people who are here tonight, who went to the meetings, who sent all those texts and emails, because they have been flooding in on my phone and my computer, and I'm sure the rest of you have received the same. I also want to thank staff at Valley Metro and Eric. We asked you to go out and find a neutral person and hold these hearings and gather more information, and more importantly, give the residents more information. And you did that, and I deeply appreciate that. I think that was probably our failing in the beginning, but at least we learned our lesson and we know how to proceed. You know, it's kind of ironic when Mayor Stanton was here and he was proposing 2050, he came to me, and I have always been a supporter of light rail. I believe that we are a modern city, we are the 5th largest, and we need multiple choices for transportation, and light rail is one of them. And at that time I said, okay, I think that what you really need to understand, my district, and I know Councilman or Vice Mayor Waring's district, it will be years if you ever go beyond Metro Center. Years and years and years, but what we really need are roads. And we need our streets paved. And so with a lot of pressure, he agreed to add street money in there. Had I had more support, we probably would have got a bigger percentage, because I was very confident that it would pass once the voters saw it on the ballot, that they want the options and they want the light rail. So I'm a little disappointed some people didn't support me in that effort, but I still believe there are 3 sections of money, and there's enough to do light rail and to do roads and to do our buses. And staff is going to we will have a meeting on that and discuss it, but light rail is not dying. I am positive of that. And I will tell you that one of the rewards, although everybody says, oh, and we heard tonight, oh, it will be horrible, nothing's going to happen. Well, last week I had the honor of representing the city at the reception for Creighton University. Creighton president and chief financial officer told me the reason they picked Phoenix and they picked Park Central was because it was on light rail, and they wanted their students to be able to use that transportation, because doctors and nurses and when their students have no money and no transportation, and they wanted them to be able to use that to get around this city. So it does pay. That's a $100 million investment we would not have had. We all know of all the other apartments and the businesses that continue to come along Central, and all the way this route is being built. It is making a difference. I don't think it's appropriate for everywhere. I think buses, and there are bus options that could provide a great service without doing light rail, but light rail is a piece of the pie that's needed, and I am very supportive of this. Furthermore, I've always thought South Phoenix got the shaft. Just to put it bluntly, and that's how I am. I want you to have a first-class light rail project, and 2 Rail provides that to you. Will it be painful? Absolutely. There's no doubt about it, but we will do everything we can to minimize that pain and to help you through the process. So I am very supportive of this motion, so roll call.
DeCiccio?
No.
Guevara?
Yes.
Mendoza?
Yes.
Nowakowski?
Mayor, I have a question before I vote on this. I just want to really make sure that, seeing that the construction, it looks like it's going to pass, the construction of the light rail and the traffic that we have right now, it's going to be forcing more traffic on the 7th Street and 7th Avenue. And one of the things that we've been getting a lot of calls about is a turning lane into the I-17 off of 7th Street and 7th Avenue. Make sure that we do that before the construction starts, because it's going to have a big strain on those 2 streets. And I was just wondering if that's going to happen.
Mayor and Councilman Nowakowski, yes, on 7th Avenue and at 7th Street, right at the I-17, there will be the addition of right turn lanes to help that traffic flow and make sure that that's not continuing to be a bottleneck.
All right, thank you. Mayor, it's a yes.
Pastor?
Yes.
Stark?
Yes.
Waring? Williams?
Motion carries 6-2. So this meeting is adjourned.